Good evening, everyone. At this time, we're going to go ahead and get started with the City Commission meeting for Monday, October 21st, 2024. The City Clerk can please call the roll.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner Colwell.
Here.
Commissioner Harriet.
Present.
Commissioner McCool.
Here.
Commissioner Shimkus.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jody Lee. Here. Mayor Avila.
Here. This time, I'd like to have Commissioner of District 4 please stand and lead us in the pledge and invocation.
Thank you very much. If everyone will stand. And I'm actually going to ask our former commissioner, Mr. Lauren King, if he will lead us. I love the way he does this.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could this evening, we could observe a moment of silence in place of the invocation for all that have lost something in our storms, for all that are still going through, to take a moment, please, just to reflect. Thank you all.
This time, we're going to go ahead and enter into presentation, awards, and reports. If I can please have the commission meet me on the floor. We're going to start with the Superstar Student Awards for the first grading period of the school year for 2024-2025.
Natalia Hidalgo and Natalia Rivera, Discovery Elementary. Theophilus Adams, Forest Lake Elementary. Sophia Moya, Friendship Elementary. Grace Hurd, Pride Elementary. Leah Cruz Ferrer, Sunrise Elementary.
And if the students, after they get their certificate, if they can just shake hands that way, great. Or vice versa. It works.
Coming the other way. Let's go.
Faith Soto Cruz, Timbercrest Elementary. Faith Soto Cruz. Emily Chacon, Volusia Pines Elementary. Cynthia Chen, Deltona Middle. Jan Alexis Rivera Cancel, Galaxy Middle. Blumhorst, Heritage Middle. Jadian Sanchez, Deltona High. Cody Powell, Pine Ridge.
If we can give all of our students and their teachers a big round of applause, please. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and enter into presentation by Terry Ellis on Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Give it 5 minutes.
Terry, while they're leaving, you can set up and.
Is my presentation up here?
What happened was,
There was 2 Natalias.
so I just told her that was very sensitive.
Yeah, you're going to give it to her tomorrow. I think.
She was like so disappointed.
No.
Just wanted her to go to make sure that she's going to be given.
She'll get her certificate.
How do I get my presentation up here? So I sent the slides. Sent it to Sandy. Okay. I mean, without the slides, it's kind of pointless. Sent them last Wednesday.
We're just working to get the slides up so everyone can see them.
So the DB partnership? Okay.
Troy, did you rotate?
Fix it, Troy.
That's what I just said.
Did you? Troy, did you rotate yours?
Oh, it's sideways.
Troy, come fix it. You're just toying with us right now.
I can't find a lock.
I'm going to rotate this thing. Okay. That got us halfway. Okay. Does that look like it? Okay, I'll go. I'll go put it up.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So we're just going to wait until it's on the screen. So as you all know, tomorrow at the center is our Domestic Violence Community Awareness Night for West Volusia. It's a very important event, as I'm going to talk about. Hopefully, I'll see you folks there. I know that I've already talked about it. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can. Is there the slideshow version?
I think that's just a feedback.
Okay. All right. So, domestic violence. Let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, let me introduce you to the Domestic Violence Partnership of Volusia County. Very important to what's been going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is the problem itself. So the question is, why is this so important? So as of 2022, Volusia has the third highest rates in the state of Florida. And actually it's the highest because the two cities that are higher than us, the population is really, really low. So if you look at cities that have a larger population, Volusia County is actually the highest. So our rates are 604.7 incidents per every 100,000 people, which is almost twice the average for the entire state of Florida. So as you can see at the very top, Florida has an average of 305 incidents per 100,000, and Volusia County is at 604. So we are 31% higher than Seminole County, which is our neighbors, Sanford area, 31% higher than the Tampa-St. Pete area, that's the Hillsborough County, 35% higher than Orange County, and 71% higher than Ormond Beach. I included some, as you can see, Jacksonville, Miami, we're higher than everybody. So it is a very serious problem for Volusia County. So part of the response, let me take you back for a minute. So last year was the first Domestic Violence Community Awareness Night for Volusia County. And during that particular event, Sheriff Chitwood attended. And at the end of the night, when he gave his comments, he charged the folks in the room and the nonprofits to do better. That he commented about how much bandwidth is being taken up just with West Volusia, and a large portion of that bandwidth for West Volusia is actually right here because of the domestic violence rates in Deltona. So part of what we did since last year is we came together to form the Domestic Violence Partnership of Volusia County. So we are a partnership of domestic violence advocates and agencies. So we're nonprofits, the Certified Domestic Violence Shelter, which is formerly the Beacon Center, law enforcement, victims advocates, government representatives. So we've come together to collaborate and improve the responses and communicate, improve the quality of what's going on in Volusia County, and advocate for more resources, more funding to meet the needs of the domestic violence population. And that, again, is very important because traditionally, especially with nonprofits, everyone kind of stays in their silos and works independently. So by forming this partnership, we've been able to get in the room, there's about 20 of us, get in the room, share information, share experience, and really get down to the root of what needs to happen in order to address this problem. So domestic abuse decisions. So I wanted to show this slide because, a lot of times people ask the questions about, well, if it's domestic abuse or domestic violence, why doesn't somebody leave? And this is a good illustration. It's kind of like that commercial that says, this is your brain on drugs. Well, this is your brain on domestic abuse and domestic violence, trying to figure out and make decisions in the middle of emotions and trying to figure out how to do things. And so I really wanted folks to get a good idea of what that feels like. So it's not so easy to just leave. So the domestic violence help path. So I know that this flow chart is a little confusing. I really put it up here to show you that, believe it or not, there is a logical path for how domestic violence is managed in Volusia County. I didn't think it was when I first started this about 2 years ago, but there really is a logical path to follow. And I'm not going to go through this whole flow chart, but what I really want you to focus on are the items in yellow. And so these are the items that we really need to development. We have things in place, but the resource shopping, some of you might have heard me talk about that before. And resource shopping is when you have a problem and you go somewhere and you're handed a piece of paper or a website, and basically now you have to start shopping about how to solve your problem. And going back to that previous slide, when your head is going and all these decisions going on and all these issues, worried about the kids and where do I live and what do I do about my job and what do I do about prescriptions and all of that, resource shopping is not exactly the best time that is not really going to be the best time for you to do that. Another problem that we have, obviously, is space. Yes, we have a certified domestic violence shelter in Volusia County, but it is not nearly enough. Unfortunately, there's always more victims than there is space. We do have some resources that have opened up within the last year. So the the space problem is getting a little bit better, but it is definitely an issue. The other thing that I wanted to address is we do have support groups. Again, they're there, but it's something that needs to be developed. So that's one of the things that, all these items in yellow are the things that partnership has been talking about over the past year. And then the one in the right-hand corner, domestic violence transition to housing, that one is grayed out because we do not have domestic violence transition to housing in Volusia County. When you look outside of Volusia County and a few places in the state, and when I say a few, I think there's probably only 3, but when you get outside of the state of Florida, it's often called a level 2 response. Because when someone is in a shelter, either with the neighborhood center or the domestic abuse council, those stays range somewhere between 60 days, maybe 90 days. I know the neighborhood center has a program and it might even be a little bit longer, but they're very limited. But the point being is that when, again, if you think about that slide with the top of the head open and everything that's going on, when you've been forced to leave your home and figure out what to do, and now you go to a shelter and try to put things in place in order to become self-sufficient, it's hard enough to find housing and get on your feet under normal circumstances. But when you're trying to do that as a trauma victim, a domestic violence victim, it's even harder. So we definitely have a need for transitional housings for those folks that are not able to really get on their feet during that shelter stay, and give them the opportunity to be able to go somewhere, go into a supportive housing situation and give them more time so that they're able to become self-sufficient and, quite frankly, not go back to their abusers. So some of the things, observations, again, like I said, I've been doing this for about 2 years. The partnership has been in existence for about 10 months, and some of the observations that we've observed is a lack of focus. And now I'm talking about not Deltona, I'm talking about across the whole county, and actually, truth be told, across most of the state. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and that I have identified. We're missing funding, we're missing grant opportunities, educational opportunities, partnerships and collaboration, which those last two have been addressed by the partnership. But that lack of focus is really a part of the problem why domestic violence is so prevalent in Volusia County. The second one, domestic violence, it's a subcategory of homelessness. And the reason that this is a problem is because when you look across the state of Florida and federally, homelessness is very often kind of a subcategory of homelessness, and there's a few reasons why. Because they share similar challenges, things like housing, social economic impacts, trauma, finances, employment challenges, mental health, education. So they share a lot of similarities with the homeless population. But the problem with that is that domestic abuse victims are just that. They're victims. These are folks that have had, a lot of times, a crime perpetrated against them. They aren't homeless or in a situation because of social economic choices or, other challenges that you might find in higher instances with the homeless population. So this is a problem because, going back to that lack of focus, it's convenient to kind of slide it under homelessness, but again, it takes away the focus and the seriousness of the event. And actually, within about the last year and a half, there's been some changes on the federal level. So folks are starting to realize that we really do need to separate homelessness and domestic abuse in order to address the subject matter adequately. The next one is multiple agency oversight. And that equals inconsistency. And I just want to show you this slide again. It's not something that I expect someone to sit there and figure out. But I just want to show you about when a little while ago, somebody asked me, I think Dana actually, asked me, who owns domestic violence? And then I started going down my rabbit hole that you all know that I go down. And this is what I came up with. It is, domestic violence is separated between the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, HUD, Department of Education, those are the ones in dark green. Everything in blue is the state of Florida, and then every one of those has individual reports. And I have read every single report that's on this particular slide, and since I went through these reports, I've discovered that there's probably just as many other reports that I haven't gone through yet. And when I look at those reports, it's very disheartening because I do see so many instances where things are inconsistent. Numbers are reported differently, wrong. So going back to that lack of focus and inconsistency, these are some of the reasons why domestic violence persists, and it is so high in Volusia County. So some of the goals for the next year, I talked about breaking down the silos, and this one is probably one of the things that's going to gain the most ground, because by having those folks in the room and again, sharing documents, sharing experiences, sharing contacts, sharing how to identify a resource, sharing cases. I have this case, oh, well, send them here, they can do a better job. That has done so much to assist within this past year. And then we want to expand that local funding and grant activities. This one is particular to Volusia County, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. It's probably an offshoot of, we have so many things to focus on. But some of the grant opportunities that I looked at, Volusia County is not on a lot of those lists. And I looked at awards list, and then I went back and I looked at the applicant list, and Volusia County wasn't even on the applicant list. So again, we have some missed opportunities, so this is going to be an opportunity for us to really get down and dirty and go after the funding. And then the last one of our goals is to apply those lessons and the outcomes that we've learned through the partnership through working with the certified shelter and everybody who will be hopefully in the room tomorrow night. There's a lot of agencies that are going to be there, but take those lessons learned, and we have to ask, advocate, and we have to get down and actually strategically start being about the business of taking action and being strategic about that. So we can drive change. We can. We've seen some of it even just locally over this past year, and we can do even more. So that is my update for domestic violence, and I hope to see all of you folks tomorrow night, 5 to 8 at the center. And anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do. Back to my table.
Go ahead, Commissioner McCool.
I'm sorry, our iPads are locked right now, so I can't. Sorry about that, Ms. Ellis.
okay.
Thank you very much, first of all, for helping to champion this, because Volusia County, we don't do as good as we can, actually, regarding this matter. And so thank you. And thank you for explaining what this new partnership is about, because there's a serious lack of addressing this. And also, Ms. Ellis, in reminding our public to join us tomorrow evening for this, is that it is a fact that VOCA funding, which is our victim advocate funding, has been cut. We're missing $77 million in the state of Florida. We've had our Attorney Moody even bring this up regarding the fairness this act for crime victims, because we are 40%, the VOCA funding has been cut by 40%. What does that mean to us as a municipality is that we are going to have to somehow figure out a way to replace this funding so that we can advocate for victims of domestic violence. VOCA funding is not taxpayer subsidized. I know that's going to be first and foremost on some people's minds.
Thank you, Commissioner, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up. It is not taxpayer money. It's the result of fines that are assessed in criminal cases, and that amount has been steadily going down year after year. Unfortunately, as the Department of Justice has changed the way that they adjudicate some cases. You know, when you have a case that is a criminal case and then it's set aside, for example, and you enter into a pretrial agreement and six months, a year, you know, everything is fine, you do your community service and it goes away, guess what? You're not leveraged to fine in some of these cases. And that's just an example of, you know, one of the changes that has happened. That has been happening more and more and more. And as we've been losing that money, then the impact is we don't have the same amount of funding to address domestic violence victims.
And this indeed is, this is actually an act of Congress here, is how it's been redistributed also. So I would encourage you all to delve into, we do have a serious domestic violence problem, as you see. There's not being addressed, not enough housing or transitional housing. I have been advocating this for 6 years now. So thank you for this presentation, Ms. Ellis. I hope to see everyone there tomorrow night.
Absolutely. And lastly, let me just say this, and I've been saying this a lot. Domestic violence is not just a women's issue. You know, I'm the only girl out of 6 kids, 5 brothers, very, very close to my dad. And I always tell people that my mom showed me how to be a woman. My dad showed me how to be strong. And I say that because men play such a vital role. You know, you sit back and you see what's going on with your sisters, cousins, and sometimes you can be that voice to pull them aside. And just hearing that from a man can make a big, big difference. So if you're somebody out there in the community that has some concerns, please, please join the ladies. You know, come get this education so that if something happens and you have the opportunity, then you'll know what to do to help somebody in your family, because domestic violence conversations, they absolutely save lives.
Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Terry, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm proud to say that the city of Deltona was partner in the first meeting that you held at the center.
Yes.
The figures that you showed us, it shows that it was from 2022.
Yes.
So as of today, how much has it increased that you know of?
We have not seen updated numbers. As you know, Commissioner, the law enforcement community has been going through some reporting changes, and because of those reporting changes, we have not, as of yet, seen updated information. So I'm hoping that eventually when we get the 2023 information, I'm, you know, very much hoping that those numbers go down, but that is the most current information as of 2 weeks ago.
Okay, can you also repeat the information for the event tomorrow, please?
It is at the center from 5 to 8. The first about 30 minutes, you'll have the opportunity to speak with the agencies that are in the room. And then there's a lot of information that we're going to be presenting to the public. This is not just going to be agencies getting up there and talking about your domestic violence story and be strong. No, this is a very information-rich event. So that's why I'm trying to invite people that if you have any interest in the experience, if you're worried, this is where you want to come. The people that can help are in the room. The information that is being presented is very valid, valuable information. So it's
Thank
tomorrow
you.
night at the center from 5 to 8.
Thank you, Terry.
Commissioner Harriet
Terry, thank you very much for coming and presenting this. This is something that drastically impacts our community, and these facts aren't as prevalent in the community with everybody as they should be. So thank you very much for that, and I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
This time, we're going to go ahead and enter into public forum.
Claudia Sava, please.
Do we have another presentation? I think we have another presentation. It's off agenda.
I apologize. It's not on my agenda, but okay.
You want me to sit down?
We have, yeah, please. I apologize. We have another presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioner. I'd like to introduce David Hamster with Pegasus Engineering to speak to you regarding the impacts of Hurricane Milton.
I'm going to grab it. How do I advance the pages? Just page up or page down?
I think page up, page down.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Commission. For the record, David Hamster with Pegasus Engineering, Winter Springs, Florida. I know you have a full agenda tonight, but there's a lot of important slides I want to go over in detail regarding what happened just a couple weeks ago, the impacts it's had to your residents, and what steps we could do moving forward. There are some slides I'm going to go over quickly because they're more factual, and there's other ones I think I need to dwell on regarding misinformation and how some of these systems really work. As you remember, when Hurricane Milton was coming, everybody was hoping for different paths so it wouldn't come across them directly. But the shift to the south, though it may have benefited Tampa, kind of impacted Volusia County in a bad way because it introduced more rainfall than we had predicted. So that path moving south kind of produced rainfalls in the upward of 14 or 15 inches in Volusia County, Orange City, DeBerry, Ormond Beach, and communities like that, which again, we're going to get into how severe that storm is relative to the design standards of our system. For those who are unfortunately here, a couple years ago, we had a very similar result, and we're going to kind of compare the two. These are rainfall stations throughout the city of Deltona. The quantities or rainfall amount varies from a couple inches. We have found out those gauges are compromised as far as rainfall as high as 15 or 18 inches throughout the parts of Lake Helen, Volusia County, and your neighboring communities. So if you were to average all these numbers up, we're getting between 12 to 15 inches of rainfall that occur basically less than 24 hours, which is greater than a 100-year event. Again, 2 years ago when Ian came through, almost exactly 2 years ago to the day, similar rainfall occurred then, numbers on upward between 16 to 17 inches, which made it a greater frequency storm event for the city. Let me dwell on what a 100-year event actually means. It's driven by the rainfall amount and the rainfall duration. You can get 5 inches in 5 minutes or 5 inches in 24 hours. Drastically different results. 5 inches in 24 hours, a stormwater pond can easily accommodate. 5 inches in 1 hour can cause your streets to flood, your inlets to fail, your swales to overtop. So when it comes to storms of this magnitude, when you get something like 12 or 13 inches, even by itself in 24 hours, has catastrophic impacts to us and your neighbors. But in the case of DeBerry and Deltona and Orange City, it's been reported we got 12 or 13 inches in half that time. An extraordinary load on our system. Now, because of the characteristics of Deltona, we're more of a flat terrain, large water bodies to absorb that high-intensity storm. But your neighbor to the west, for example, Orange City, had multiple road failures, and I'll explain why. Also, what does a 100-year event mean? You'll also often hear in the news, it happens once in every 100 years. That is the most incorrect statement you'll ever hear. It means it's got a 1% chance of occurring any given year. We had a 100-year storm 2 years ago, and we had it again this year. So don't be misled by the news or others who say, gee, we had one 50 years ago, we're not going to get another one for 50 years. Please don't fall in that trap. A 25-year event is a storm event that's got a 4% chance of occurring any given year. Whether you believe in climate change, global warming, or the cycle of the weather, we are getting more intense, more robust storms that are causing bigger casualties. This is Orange City. This is 1792, just north of Enterprise where the Wawa is. This is a classic example of too much rainfall in a short duration. There's a single 3-foot pipe underneath 1792 that could not accommodate that intense storm. It quickly filled up over top 1792 and washed it out that you see from these photographs. This also happened in 2008 during Tropical Storm Faye. Another example of a culvert that was too small for the event. This is Threadgill, immediately west of the Fish Memorial Hospital. And this is another example of the intensity and the rainfall amount that occurred causes some of this infrastructure incapable of handling it and causing some failure. Now let's talk about Deltona specifically. We have 4 watersheds. We're fortunate that 3 of the 4 have a connection to the St. Johns River or Lake Monroe. And that is Gleason, McGarity, and Providence. That's these 3 smaller basins down here. And the big, huge pink one that you see is the Lake Teresa watershed. As a form of comparison, if you add up the entire city limits of Orange City and DeBerry, the Teresa watershed is still larger. It's 32 square miles in size. It's a tremendous watershed. Even though residents may have incurred some temporary impacts in the other 3 basins, the ability for water to get out of there through pipes and pumps and ditches to the river was a benefit to those. Unfortunately, the ones in the Teresa benefit basically have a very, very limited ability to get out in a timely fashion. So let me go back a little bit. This is an image from 1960s done by the United States Geologic Service. Basically the same watershed limits. Back in the 60s, we had the same number of water bodies, less houses, less development, but the same drainage characteristics. From the 1960s to 2005, the Teresa watershed did not have a discharge to Lake Monroe or St. Johns River. 0. Whatever fell in that watershed filled up, either infiltrated or evaporated. And we dealt with that for many, many decades. In 2005, the city's consultant was able to design and permit what they call the Lake Doyle emergency overflow structure, which for those in the audience, north is to the right, Lake Monroe is to the left. The Lake Doyle emergency overflow structure is a very southwest location, and that was designed and permitted in 2005. Unfortunately, it was challenged by 2 homeowners who live in Deltona, and the city did not prevail in that lawsuit, and they were required to brick the outfall of the pipe so it cannot discharge water to Lake Monroe or the St. Johns River. So from 2005 to 2022, the city could not use that system in place to provide flood protection. That 17 years that a system was in place was unable to provide the residents the affordable flood protection. Come 2022, Hurricane Ian came, 15 to 17 inches of rainfall. We had to go to the Water Management District, who governs this structure being closed because of the lawsuit, and with their permission, we were allowed to remove the brick plugs. Phyllis and Glenn's staff went out there. Very dangerous situation. If you've been in the Audubon Park, there's a large 60-inch pipe in the ditch. They had to go down in the water safely, literally remove the bricks one by one to open up that pipe, then go to Lake Doyle, open up the floodgates and start releasing the flood waters to go to Lake Monroe. So again, many, many years of NOAA connection, 17 years with a system in place we can use, and since 2022, we're going to get to that in a second, the ability to use that as needed for emergency events. Now, how do we get those approvals? And as we have to make what they call an emergency field authorization to the Water Management District. We're basically asking the district, within certain limitations, for the city to remove the boards, lower the gates, and allow the floodwaters within the Teresa watershed to discharge downstream. The balance is the benefit we're providing the residents, making sure we don't flood people at Stone Island, Geneva, Astor, and other people within the waterway. Also, the Lake Teresa watershed historically never had a connection to the St. Johns River, so by allowing water to flow, there's water quantity and water quality issues we have to overcome. Once these are granted, they usually give us a 90-day window. If we still need to keep it open, we resubmit the EFA, the emergency fuel authorization. The district grants us another 90 days to keep it open. And we've kind of been doing this process for the last 2 years between Ian, Milton, and some of the storms in between that we've had. Remember, we had a very wet September, Labor Day weekend. Those 2 weeks were very wet. We got permission from the district to open up the floodgates. One thing I keep hearing, and I've been here for a long time, is that bothers me a lot, is the city didn't do enough. The city didn't react quick enough. Well, we have handcuffs. We can't open when we feel like we can open it. We have to either get a governor's declared event, or we have to get the permission from the St. John's Water Management District. In the case of Milton, the governor was proactive enough to issue the emergency state declared event before Milton even hit Deltona. So when he made that announcement, I think it was on a Saturday, I talked to Joseph Walker. He opened up the gates that Saturday morning before we even submitted the EFA on Monday to the district. So the city reacted as quickly as we legally could to open that gate on the Saturday before Milton arrived on Wednesday night, Thursday morning to start releasing the floodwaters. And it's still open to this day. For those who have never seen it, and you can't get to it because it's secured, but this is Sherrill Road, this is the Audubon Park, this is Lake Doyle, and there's a chained and locked control structure that, again, with certain permission, allows the city staff, I think 1 or 2 people have permission to go out there to do it, to open it up. The water comes out the 60-inch pipe, which was brick for many years, and eventually finds its way to the Lake Monroe St. Johns River system. For those in the audience, this is a plan view and a cross-section of the structure. We have boards that are placed in front of the pipe that we have to keep in place when we don't have permission to keep it open. And once the boards are removed, we turn the wheels to lower the gates to get the floodwaters to evacuate. These are some pictures of the drain structure. This is the outfall pipe that takes the water from Lake Doyle all the way to Audubon Park and eventually the St. Johns River. You'll notice there's some angle irons on both sides where the boards slide in to make sure it doesn't operate when we don't have permission. Then the public works staff turns the stems or the wheels, the gates lower, and then we take the floodwaters and get out to the receiving water body. Now, I think I heard a couple meetings ago, maybe it was longer than that, somebody comparing us to DeBerry. Why don't they have problems? Well, I spent 20 years of my career working in DeBerry. I think we got $35 million in grants, $50 million in infrastructure put in over that 20-year period. And their saving grace is they were able to get a 65-acre, 35-foot-deep borrow pit that precludes them from going from the river, which gives them more flexibility to pump within the city when they deem fit for flood protection. They're not held by the regulations by the district by going to the river like we are with the Lake Doyle overflow structure. Same thing with Orange City. They recently acquired, on the outskirts of town, a borrow pit to pump Mill Lake. If you've been on Mill Lake, 1792 has been underwater for quite a bit. The park is underwater, and currently their one pump station they have pretty much is like a garden hose watering the football field. It does very little flood protection. Now that they've acquired the borrow pit, they're going to have more flexibility also to release water internally and not go to the river. So back to Lake Teresa. Now I got north is up. I got Lake Helen to the north as it's flowing north to south towards Catalina, towards Howland, and all the way down to Lake Doyle. I kind of illustrate this as an example of, this is one of the few areas where the topography is relatively higher than Deltona, and as it approaches Three Island Lakes and DuPont, things basically flatten out the entire rest of the way, all the way Lake Doyle. So we have a little bit of an incline from Lake Helen. Once it hits DuPont and Three Island Lakes, from there to Lake Doyle, all those lakes in between basically act as one system that goes up and down based on culverts and roadway overtopping during a major event. So, pumps. There's a big misconception that pumps can solve our problem. Well, portable pumps on trailer mounted pumps like this in the picture have very limited capacity. They do a great job on draining a flooded intersection, maybe a couple streets in a neighborhood, maybe a pond that's not working. But to put a pump into a large water body like Three Island Lake, Lake DuPont, the Butler chain of lakes, it's really like putting a straw in a pool. It provides minimal, if no, effective results. Our biggest saving grace is to keep that structure open as long as we can at Lake Doyle to move large quantities of water to the St. Johns River. But they do have their place, and I don't want to mislead anybody. They have limited use, but please don't think that deploying 10 pumps at a lake is going to do anything meaningful or measurable for flood protection throughout the city. So for comparison's sake, a 6-inch pump is a typical pump or an 8-inch pump that Public Works can get by renting it. They have a few of their own, or we can get them from the state as needed. A typical 6-inch pump with an intake line and a hose going to wherever it's going to can move, and I like to use this terminology instead of cubic feet per second, billion gallons per day, because it's hard to grasp it. It can move about 2 or 3 acres of land that's got a foot of water on it. So that's when I say 2 or 3 acre feet a day is how much a 6-inch pump can move. The Lake Doyle system is moving 150 acre feet per day from the Teresa chain into the St. Johns River. So if you divide 2 or 3 into 150, that's the equivalent amount of pumps we would have. It's just not practical to put that many pumps, nor the district would allow the 150 acre feet per day plus hundreds of pumps to go to the St. Johns River. So our biggest goal is to protect our ability to keep that structure open as long as we can. Whether or not the city ever wants to revisit the lawsuit and maybe prevail on the upper end is another option. The reasons for the suit, I think, were, I won't say maybe the person's in the audience, I'll respectful of their wishes, but I think it's impacting far greater people are being flooded by the wishes of 2 people for other reasons. So let's pick Three Island Lake and Lake DuPont. This is a typical FEMA 100-year flood elevation, 100-year floodplain. That's it in blue. So I just took an aerial map, I turned on the FEMA elevations, and what you can't see in the images, I put a bunch of stars of houses that are in the blue area. So for Three Island Lake and Lake DuPont, I've counted over 100 homes in the blue area just in those 2 lakes that are at risk. Now, they could be above the water level, or in many cases, they're below the water level, like we saw for Ian and for Milton. So I think our focus moving forward should be more on residential mitigation, and I'd hope that we can get a huge pump or a huge ditch to drain Teresa. We've been talking about this for too many years. I want to say going back to the mid-'90s. Here we are, 30 years later. It's just not going to happen anytime soon. There's too much regulatory control in place to protect the river's quality, protect the people who live in the river, and so I think we got to restart revisiting or rethinking how we handle the people in the Teresa chain of lakes. So with that said, we're going to do something we did 2 years ago after Hurricane Ian, with the city manager's permission, is we're going to have a workshop fairly soon for those who flooded directly. We're going to reach out. I think the current count is roughly 35 people who have gone underwater, far less than Ian. I think in Ian we had over 100. But it's not to say that there's far more that have water surrounding their house, people that can't flush their toilet. But we're going to focus in this workshop for people who actually had water enter their home, they had their furniture, their home compromised, and this may be the second or third time it's happened. When we had this workshop 2 years ago, we had about 6 or 7 people sign up for grant mitigation, which I'll get to in a second. But we're going to do it again this time around because some people have got hit a second time, or they've been here for the very first time. They recently moved here, unfortunately. The things we plan on covering for those who attend, I'll do this quickly because we're going to go over it in detail later, is flood insurance. I am surprised how many people are in floodplains who have insurance, but I'm not naive. I know it's extremely expensive, and a lot of people can't afford flood insurance when you're in a floodplain. So we're going to talk about other options. We're doing this up and down the coast and on the Panhandle where we're elevating houses. I know people laugh at it, but I will tell you, we had a couple of people in New Smyrna Beach that we elevated with prior Irma money. They got elevated just in time when Milton came, and he sent me a video, and the water was under his house. He was living in his house safely and didn't lose anything. The elevation of these homes will vary based on where you're at. If you're on the coast, they tend to be higher. If you're further inland, like Winter Springs, Deltona, and the Panhandle, they could be only maybe 2 or 3 feet off the ground, which is enough to give you the security of not losing your possessions. Another option, if your home is structurally not sound to be elevated, is to demo it and reconstruct it at higher elevation. And this is only allowed by FEMA if it's determined that it structurally cannot be lifted as it exists today. Another option is acquisition. I think some people over the years have flooded once, twice, or 3 times. They've had enough. They want to get their house sold or purchased by a grant. And in this particular case, the city can turn into a playground, into a stormwater pond, or something more productive than having a house that's at the same location being flooded repeatedly. For those who don't want to participate in the grants or don't have the patience to wait for the grant to get approved, there's also things that could be done on a personal level on floodproofing your homes. There's shields for doors, sliding glass doors, front doors. There's also different types of dams that surround your house to provide the barrier, the protection you need so you don't lose everything for a second or third time. I do want to give you an update on your grants that we submitted for the city for Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Nicole, and Hurricane Idalia. We submitted a total of 7 applications. The first 2 were for elevating Alcan Boulevard and Catalina Boulevard after they both went underwater during Ian. I am happy to say both of those grants have been approved by the state, and they're in FEMA's hands for approval. So that's roughly $12 million in grant dollars to get those roads elevated. And somebody asked me the other day, well, if you're going to elevate, aren't you going to dam the water? No, we're going to have multiple culverts or bridges to cope the water underneath it so the water balances on both sides. But we have a road that's safe for first responders or for those who need to get out of here safely during a hurricane event. Under Hurricane Nicole, we submit other grants for residential mitigation measures. One grant is for 4 homes to be elevated. Another separate grant is for 1 home to be elevated and 1 home to be reconstructed. Again, we have found out recently, from what I've heard, that all these are being supported by the state of Florida, the Division of Emergency Management, and they also are going to be forwarded to FEMA for approval. We're also getting a generator for City Hall. And then lastly, for Hurricane Idalia, we've added another home on Riverhead to be acquired. So we're looking at $15 million in grants that's coming our way. Now, some people say, gee, it's been taking so long. Does this really help? Unfortunately, between Irma, Ian, Idalia, Nicole, all the storms we've had the last couple of years, it's really taxed the state system. They brought consultants on to help process these grants. I was told recently, for those I know personally, and Deltona that flooded a second time, for us to write letters directly to the state, the homeowners, and the city, to the state, and get them to facilitate FEMA releasing the grants sooner than later so we can get them some relief sooner than later. Also, after Hurricane Ian, we had some subdivisions fairly new that expressed some or surfaced some problems that we have since been tackling with city staff. That's Cortland Park off Doyle Road, Osprey Estates off of Doyle Road, Hampton Oaks by Fort Florida and Alcam, and Violin Reserve. These are all fairly new subdivisions. Got exposed a few things with the storms, and we are working with the engineer records, with the developers, and in one case with the HOA to try to get these rectified and prevent these things from reoccurring on future developments. This is an example of us working together with the developer and their engineer. This is Hampton Oaks. This is Beechdale Park and Beechdale Pond. This is Sterling Lake. And what you see in yellow is a system the city built years ago called Drysdale and Chapel. It's a bunch of interconnected ponds with pumps and pipes, which was overwhelmed with both Ian and Milton. And the idea is to have a partnership, maybe with the developer, to do some additional improvements in the Beechdale Park Beachdale Pond area to prevent Fort Florida Road from overtopping again like it did recently. So I went very quickly because I know you have a long night, but I do have 2 closing comments before I sit down and after I take questions from the commission. I've been doing this for 38 years. My whole career has been spent working for cities and counties. And I got to say, I've been very impressed with the Public Works Department for Deltona. I was here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, most all day, working with Phyllis, Glenn, Joseph, Don, Steve, and watching these guys in the field. And all the abuse they took from people driving by and saying things that were inappropriate, they never said anything. They kept on working hard, laying hoses, installing pumps. And I think they are owed a big congratulations for working through this prior to, during, and afterwards, trying to protect the residents of Deltona. Last thing is, I answer questions from the commission. When I do sit down and listen to the public, I respectfully request if I can get back up to maybe clarify some misinformation you may hear from the public. So with that said, I'm all ears, and I'll answer any questions you all may have.
Commissioner McCool.
Mr. Hamstra, thank you very much for this. Thank you for dispelling theory. Thank you for bringing actual engineering experience and pragmatism to this, because we have a lot of residents in our community that are very lost right now, and some guidance and some formal engineering is good to hear here. One of these areas is in my district. I mean, this is my whole community, but one of these is in Hampton Oaks, and I know that we've talked about this for a couple of years here, even before the recent problem regarding the engineering and development, and so thank you for clearing that up also. Could you tell me, sir, is there a best contact for follow-up questions that our residents might have? I know you directly, but is there any ongoing considerations as we move along, sir, as far as like this presentation goes, as we move forward the basin, Lake Teresa Basin study? Because, you know, a lot of the issues in my dealing the last 6 years has been regulatory, and I know in talking with St. John's, it's not as easy as us being able to flip the switch on. So thank you for clearing that up also. So this indeed will be ongoing, correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am. And whether, like we talked about briefly in the presentation, one is whether or not the city wants to revisit better control the Lake Doyle control structure. We had no ability for 17 years to use it. For the last 2 years, the district has been cooperating with the city, given the impacts to the residents, but we may want to revisit a little bit of relaxation on that structure so we can use it more proactively. Again, when it rains in Deltona, and as large as the watershed is, we're talking about 6,000 to 8,000 acre-feet of water that falls in the city. That Lake Doyle structure moves 150. You can say it's going to take 45 or 60 days to dry this place out. That's assuming we don't get more rain, we don't get a straight line storm this December, and the one good or bad thing about Deltona is the groundwater. And some people will say, gee, we've got the lakes open, the pumps are running, my lake is still going up. All these sandy soils where the water goes in, then goes horizontal to the lakes and keeps feeding these for quite a while. So number one is to keep that Doyle structure open as long as possibly can. And then number two is basically revisit, maybe try to get a better control on it. But the other thing is just to maybe revisit, we could put bigger pipes internally. We're still just sloshing water back and forth in a very flat area. So I really want the city to reconsider, for those who are in the floodplain, and not to mislead them, we got some silver bullet to fix it, is whether or not we look seriously at some residential mitigation.
And absolutely, sir, that's the thing I wanted to bring up too, because my district was a primary area of focus. I mean, I know that there are problem areas in every district, but I'm addressing mine, sir, is that we talked about acquisition of these properties because of the flooding, right, again and again. And I just wanted it reiterated, sir, as you moved through this. thank you so thoroughly, but understanding that one of the reasons that we could not move some of this water is there was a prior lawsuit that prevented the city from moving water. There were 2 homeowners, and the lawsuit that they won prevented us from moving water for 17 years. I want that to sink in, and as far as the city revisiting that. So, and sir, if you would just also, you are available through our Public Works Department, and again, thank you, Glenn and Phyllis, the whole staff, because yes, I work with you day in and day out as you guys had people in the field day and night. Thank you for the job that you guys did, and you have taken a heap of abuse over what is perceived of your not moving quick enough or you not doing this quick enough or whatever. And I think the perception is that better information to the public like this, better information to the public allows them to understand that we have a lot of regulatory challenges. It's not something that we can simply say. And I know that from my conversation with St. Johns River management this morning, my conversation with them, hopefully we will be moving towards some better control for Deltona as we move forward with that. So thank you, Mr. City Manager, for getting this done, also to answer this, to provide this presentation. Public Works, Phyllis, Glenn, thank you for making sure that we had this tonight as we are at a fevered pitch, you know, regarding our homeowners. What do I do next? What's going to happen? So thank you very much for that.
And I hope
I'm sorry, Mr. Hamstra, if one last thing. The public, this presentation will be available. I've asked that this be made available to you all. So this will be available, Joyce, I believe, said on the website, and I'll have print copies at my town hall on Wednesday night. So please know that that will be available as well. Thank you.
And just to reiterate, we hope within 30 days we'll have that public workshop for the residents who flooded.
Commissioner Vila-Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I was listening to a program on the news channel, and is it true that the St. Johns River moves half a mile per hour? And that's why it's slow. It's, you know, it's a slow for the cities to get rid of their water.
Well, it primarily has to do that the St. Johns River is fed as far upstream or south of us from Brevard County, and it moves at a very slow pace through Jacksonville and eventually to the ocean. So because it's kind of going against what one would think, instead of flowing north to south, it flows north ever so slowly. But 2 things happen with the river moving that slowly. Everybody upstream of us, or everybody south of us, Winter Springs, Oviedo, Geneva, Brevard County, that feeds in the St. Johns River, because of that delayed response, the river sometimes will crest several days or weeks later after the actual events that we see here in Deltona. But it is a very slow moving, but it has an extremely high capacity to move water. During the Hurricane Ian, it was measured to be moving 30,000 cubic feet per second, and we were only adding 75 from the city. So it was easily able to absorb that and take it downstream. But yes, it's a slow moving.
Right. So, I mean, when I heard this on the channel, I was surprised, because you look at the river and it's moving really fast for us, but to find out that it's only moving half a mile in 1 hour, that's a big shocker. The other thing I wanted to say was another program that I was watching, and I had the conversation with our city manager, was an emergency management director spoke about the 100-year plan, and he mentioned that it'd be foolish for all other cities to continue with that plan. He advised that 25, the most 50-year plan would be more advisable for any city, especially like ours, to follow. So I did speak to Doc about it, and I'm hoping that we can look into that and see how we can change it here in the city of Deltona.
Yes, it's all about money. It's just got to get grants and more money to expedite those plans, yes.
Yes, but thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Commissioner Harriet.
Mr. Hamstra, thank you very much for coming tonight. Can you speak briefly on the water that's overtopping Catalina that's coming into Lake Helen? How would we how do we address that? Because that's not water that fell within the city of Deltona, but we're talking about water that fell into land and Lake Helen that floods out, quite frankly, the top end of District
Sure.
1.
So these watershed limits have not changed for 50, 60 years. And over the years, as things begin to transition from rural to urban, culverts are put in place to maintain the hydraulic connection between one water body to the other. Because of topographic characteristics, this portion has a pretty good fall, but right north of Catalina, I think it's called Sand Lake, don't quote me on it, it's basically the same elevation as Three Islands Lake. So once it gets there, it all basically spreads out from here all the way to Lake Doyle. There's no way to capture that and divert it to like Deep Creek, because they would have the same challenges, either the county or Lake Helen would have the same challenges of taking that landlocked area and introducing it to Deep Creek. So the question is whether or not, when we do elevate Catalina with the grant, it won't be underwater like it is now or like it was during Ian. It'll be drivable. It doesn't help the residents per se who live around the lake, but it does prevent that road from being severed and compromising our first responders' emergency response and for homeowners to get in and out as needed. So that road will be elevated when the grant gets approved and built. But, you know, when you're in the middle or at the end of a system, City of Kissimmee is a perfect example. They get all of Orlando's water, Disney's, Reedy Creeks, and it all ends up in Kissimmee. They're at the bottom of the food chain, and they get flooded all the time. But unfortunately, they have to learn to redo their system to either bypass the water or elevate things to prevent continued flooding they've been having downstream of Kissimmee. So the same thing will be here, whether or not we focus residential mitigation on DuPont and Three Island Lakes because of the influx of water coming from the north. Focus on that first. I know that the Windsor and Elston area was horribly hit. I think there was 10 homes that went underwater on Dorchester, Tulsa, Riverhead. So that area needs a lot of attention. It does have a pump station that goes to Deep Creek, but more's got to be done. Some of these watersheds are just too big, and the pumps that are draining are just too small. So residential mitigation, hopefully on those water bodies first, then we can work our way downstream if needed. So,
Is there any way for us to create more capacity on the upstream side of Catalina that we can look at so that maybe it lessens the impact on Six Mile Lake and DuPont so that we can still handle the water, but it's not rising up to flood out residents as fast?
we looked at the idea was floated out there to put up some type of damming structure like Catalina. The problem is the lake, the very next lake upstream of that is the same elevation as the other one. So if we dammed it up even a foot or two to slow the water down for people downstream, then we're rising the water on those who live in the lake upstream. And that's another lawsuit I don't want to have the city venture into. So.
Thank you. And I also want to second your comment about staff and thank them very much, because I know that they were working diligently before the storm, through the storm, and after the storm, and their efforts did help dramatically.
Vice Mayor Jody Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, thank you for all your information on this. It's very informative. It gives everybody a broad view of what took place. But a lot of this, like you were just talking about raising Catalina, but it's going to flood. When we raise Catalina, if we get the grant, it's going to flood the people that live right there. So we're going to cause more problems. I hope everybody realizes this, because a lot of this is a self-inflicted wound by just letting everybody build, and we caused it. Let me rephrase that. I mean, most of us up here weren't up here when a lot of this was built, but this is where we need to pay attention. There's houses now that people want to build now, that the land that's there is on the side of a lake and it's already halfway underwater. They're going to fill that in to build a house there, and now we're going to have to buy all these houses up with all our tax money or grants if we can get them. This is where we need to pay attention about just keep letting everybody do whatever they want and build apartment buildings, complexes, and all this stuff. I just hope in the future we can stop this.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. All right, we're going to go now to public forum.
Claudia Salva, please.
Hello, my name is Claudia Salva. I live at 1186 Algoma Street. I'm here to speak about Imagination Playground. This is my second time speaking at a City Commission meeting. I'm here tonight to speak about the same topic that I spoke about on September 15th, 2008, and on September 8th, 2008, at the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee meeting. I realize none of you were here in 2008. I'll give you a little background. The community came together, we raised the money, and we physically helped build the playground, working side by side with each other. On May 6, 1995, we held the grand opening and dedication of Imagination Playground. That date was the one-year anniversary of my son, Aaron Jacob Salva's death at the age of 3. He died from complications of the chickenpox. The original plans of the playground did not include a toddler section. The money that people gave in memory of Aaron made that section possible, and a beautiful memorial stone was embedded in the rubber ground of that toddler section. In 2008, I spoke to the commission because they had dug up the playground. Rightfully so, since the chlorine from the splash pad had deteriorated the playground and it needed to be replaced. But nobody contacted me in 2008. I found that plaque just sitting on a bench, laying there for anyone to take or destroy. I stated none of you were there, but do you know who was there? Acting Parks and Rec Manager Mark Manning. He was at both meetings I attended in 2008. In my speech from 2008, I thanked Mr. Manning, who secured Aaron's memorial. He reassured me it would be put back, and it was. It was added to the concrete walkway, and I am grateful. I went to Imagination Playground this past October 12th, and Aaron's plaque is nowhere to be found. There is still construction, and I did look through the dumpster the best I could without actually dumpster diving. I spoke with Mr. Manning on Thursday. He asked me, "Who is your son? What does it look like?" Well, exactly where was it located? I told him that I would send him pictures, which I did on Thursday. I don't have much more time to talk, but I do have lots of newspaper articles, committee meeting minutes, and photos that I can share with anyone who will take an interest in Aaron's memorial. Best scenario, they find Aaron's plaque and it gets put back in the new design. If that is not possible, I would really like it back. Someone might think, well, that was a long time ago. Nobody cares. It's just move on. A parent's grief has no timeline. To find your child's memorial missing is like losing your child all over again. My husband and I have lived in our home since 1987. I'm sure the city could have located us to let us know ahead of time that it was being dug up. This makes it twice now that this has happened to us. I don't believe Deltona tried at all to find us. I plead that Deltona makes a policy to contact families before you remove a memorial. Memorials have real people behind them with real feelings. I don't want any family to have to go through this. Thank you for your time.
Sue Burks, please.
Mr. Mayor, will you let her know that we've requested that the information be sent to the clerk, please? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sue Burks, and I live in Osteen. I'm here on behalf of Claudia. She's a dear friend of mine. And I would like you all...
If you can speak up just a little bit, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I would like you all's participation with this with me for a minute. And all I'm going to ask you to do is just raise your hand. Have you given birth or held a newborn child in your arms? Held a newborn child. Have you watched them grow and showed them the wonders around them, the wonders of the world? It's marvelous, isn't it, watching them grow up? Have you held a sick child in your arms? Sat with them in the hospital? held them in their arms till they took their last breath at 3 years old. Imagine that heartache that Claudia has endured and continues to endure because of this lack of responsibility. This mother has. And I was there with Claudia when West Cryle Park opened up, and that's a whole other story. This is about Claudia. When West Cryle Park opened in 1995, there was a ceremony and a dedication. Claudia Salva was able to have a plaque laid at the park for her son. Since that time, the park has renovated and the plaque was moved. Last time it was moved, Miss Claudia was not notified and the plaque is now lost. Devastating to say the least. Why did this happen? Who is responsible for this lack of respect? Where is the plaque now? What would you do if this happened to any one of you, whether it be your child, grandchild, whatever the circumstance? But what would you do? How would it make you feel? I'm disgusted with it myself, but so please help Claudia and her husband get to the bottom of this and do what is necessary as quickly as possible. Thank you for your time.
Mel Himes, please.
My name is Mel Himes, and I live at 2141 Wiggly Farms Road on Lake DuPont. And just a little bit of background for me, I moved here in 1974, served on the very first MSD board with Dewey Boster, and I was on the original committee for incorporation for Deltona, and I've served on several of our committees over the years. I want to let you know I'm here to talk with you again about the flooding. David, I appreciate your presentation. A lot of that information has been shared verbally, but to be able to see it on a PowerPoint is exceptional. I want to let you know that in 1993, I bought 7.5 acres on Wiggly Farms Road. They're on Lake DuPont, wooded and high and dry. In the year 2000, I bought 23 acres right next to it, wooded and high and dry. And in 2001, I built a barn on that original 7.5 acres, high and dry. In 2004, I built my home on that 7.5 acres, high and dry. And in 2004 and 2005, we had 8 hurricanes that came through Florida. They're the 8 worst storms that we've had in the state of Florida. I had no water, no flooding, didn't have to worry about it one bit. But guess what happened in 2022? Ian hit, and my barn had 3 feet of water in it. Never before had that happened. And I stood here before y'all, along with hundreds of others, and asked you to do something about this. As of today, all you've done is spend a couple of $1 million, I understand, on a study to raise 2 roads. That doesn't solve the problem of flooding. All it does is create more problems for all of us. You folks are our elected public servants, and you are supposed to be representing the majority of the people of Deltona. Yet you allowed 2 people to sue you and not do anything about it for these last 2 years. And then you had 17 years prior to that to be able to do something about the Lake Teresa Basin. It's time that you that y'all got a spine. It's time that you took control for the majority of the people that live in Deltona. It is your responsibility. You took an oath to do that, but it hasn't been done. Instead of 2 lawsuits, how about 125 lawsuits against the city of Deltona and you personally, because you've been negligent and not performing your duties for the 100,000 people that live in Deltona? 2 people sued you. How about 125 in a class action suit? Morgan & Morgan would love it. And they'll come after you, and you'll have to pay for that, not just fight the 2 lawsuits, but all of those. I'm in the insurance business. We have processed flood claims like you wouldn't believe. We're recommending to all of our customers that they ask the insurance company to subrogate against the city of Deltona for the amount of money they're paying in flood claims, because 2 years ago, you didn't do squat. So guess what? Not just 2, but 125 folks are coming after you.
Marciana Mead, please. Marciana Mead.
On a lighter note, last time I was here, I asked the city and the commission for the support of Deltona Community Gardens, and I just want to take a moment tonight to thank the city for their support, for supporting the Deltona Community Gardens event. The city and Parks and Rec both posted the event for us. 5 city officials came out to support the event, to see the good things that are happening at the garden, to listen to our concerns, and to talk about future plans. You know, I recognize that Deltona Community Gardens is not a critical concern for the city, so the attention that is paid to this project that is a steward of the environment for the city, the support is greatly appreciated, and I just wanted to come tonight and say thank you for that.
Chris Collier, please.
I couldn't help but think, this wasn't part of my speech, but the domestic violence, maybe that's related to the mismanagement of the cities, flooding cities, causing people like myself to be homeless again for a second time, okay? Hopefully we're not in an RV for 8 months like we were last time before I came up here. We need to stop with this 100-year nonsense. Let's just stop using words. Let's just say if it's 1%, then let's say 1%. Let's stop making it sound like it's a 100-year thing or 102 or 200 years. Stop with that. The river, to answer your question, the river bottlenecks at Astor, you can't really answer that question. How fast does the river flow? Currently, right now, we're in a full moon with a king tide, which is going to make the river slow down because it comes in from Jacksonville, but what do I know? Mr. Harriet, suggestion, maybe we should use areas instead of development for building ponds with beneficial vegetation and parks. Kind of like what that holding area is for DeBerry on the corner of Enterprise and High Banks, like I've talked about. You guys have the FA part, and you're messing with the residents, and you're going to get the FO part. Okay, you guys are representatives for us. Don't forget that. You guys are about to have a bunch of people up here. You keep shoving developments down our throat, you're going to have a bunch of people up here with pitchforks and torches, and that's what y'all are going to get. This is the second time flooding my house, preventable again. I made posts, public record. I posted it. People made fun of me in September. I told you guys what to do. Mayor, how many times have I been wrong? This is what's going to piss a lot of people off. We want to throw Barbara under the bus, okay? There's public record. I called the mayor. I called the city manager. I left a message with the receptionist. I sent an email to the city manager. I emailed the mayor. I spoke with Barbara. Her claims were valid. The reason she started that was some of the same issues I had with my house when we bought it. I launched a John boat with a four-wheeler. Guess what? I spoke to Barbara. I explained my case. I explained how what she's doing has affected us. And you know what? Guess what? She was willing to talk. And I messaged and let you guys know. She was willing to talk. She doesn't want to ruin this town, so stop making her the villain. That's fact, and I can prove it. Anybody who wants to see it, I can prove it. The issues were not addressed with the headwaters, as I pointed out again, from the water coming in from Lake Helen. There's posts I have on Facebook you can go see of the water gauge, water vertically coming up 4.5 foot. Everybody thought I was crazy. I was a keyboard warrior, whatever. You guys are invading my civil rights and the civil rights of your citizens with your tyrannical government. Why are my rights not as important as the people on Lake Doyle, which anybody, please go Google it, look at it. It's a wetland, not a lake. Why are their rights to flood that Lake Doyle, because they want their lakefront property, more important than my rights to live in my house that hasn't flooded in 40 years? I'd like to see study records. I'd like to see pictures from where they've gone and they've looked at all of these water gauge measurements. I'm going to skip through to the solutions. I've told you, liners and ponds, irrigate on premises, which you probably don't want that because then it's not city water that they're paying for. Dewater the lakes 3 to 5 every year, every 3 to 5 years. Dropping lakes, I've done that in lake management. Control structures at the main roads, holding ponds, make parks, and alum for the water quality if that's an issue.
Sue King, please. Sue King.
Good evening. My name is Sue King, and I'm here to talk to you about Wreaths Across America. Wreaths Across America is a national organization that places holiday wreaths on veterans' gravesites at cemeteries across the country and actually outside of the country. Here in Deltona, we will be placing wreaths on National Wreaths Across America Day, which is Saturday, December 14th at Deltona Memorial Gardens. And I'd like to invite everybody to please come out. If you have not been to one of these events, it is something like you've never seen before. It's very emotional, very touching, and it made such an important impact on me that's why I'm here. Of course, to get the wreaths to place on the grave sites, we have to do some fundraising. So I would like to let you know where and when we are going to be, not only to raise funds, but for you to come out and hear more things about Wreaths Across America. It doesn't just place wreaths. They talk about honoring those veterans that are with us, remembering those that have gone on, and teaching our children things that they are not learning in public schools anymore. So we will be on November 2nd at Veterans Fall Festival at 1200 Deltona Boulevard. We will be there. We will be on November 11th at the Veterans Day ceremony at Deltona Veterans Memorial Park. And we will be at the Volusia County Fairgrounds on various days during the fair. You can always get a hold of me. There's some papers in the back with my name and number. A lot of you know me. Just holler. And I really do want to thank the city for your support and allowing me to come and share this. With the time I have left, I'd like to talk about two things that I think are really neat about this. The wreaths are laid across the country on the same day at the same time. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're doing them in California when we're doing it here at noon. And the other thing is they ask you when you lay the wreath to read the name of the veteran. And it is amazing to be standing there laying a wreath and hearing all these names being spoken. So again, if you have a chance to come out on Saturday, December 14th. And please come visit us at the different places that we're going to be and find out more about the organization. And I thank you very much.
Sue?
Yes.
What was that time again?
It's Saturday, December 14th at 12 noon. There's a short little ceremony, and then we do the wreath laying, and it's open to the public, and it's really neat to see some people bring their little kids with them, and the kids are laying the wreaths. It's awesome. Thank
Mayor,
you.
in addition to participating in this event, I'd like to challenge each and every one of us up here to sponsor some wreaths as well. I've already given Sue
Yes, you have.
my
Thank
contribution, so I'd challenge everybody else to do the same.
So has Maritza. Thank you. Thank you.
Rose Goisia, please.
My name is Rose Goitia, and I'm the HOA president at Cortlandt Park. I'm here to talk about an issue that our community is still dealing with since Hurricane Ian, and now Milton has added to it. Over a year ago, I had invited the mayor, District 6 Commissioner Jody Lee, to visit to see firsthand the retention basin problems we have. Thank you, Mayor Avila, for taking the time to visit with us and for having Phyllis help us with the problems. Thank you, Phyllis, for putting up with all my emails and pestering you so much. Thank you also to Nick Nolly, who visited us as well. Sadly, Jody Lee didn't even bother to respond to any of my emails and never has taken the time to visit our community, yet this is your district. I have been told that there is a flaw in the infrastructure design and that many entities are working on this issue. However, it's been way too long, and the homeowners of Cortlandt Park are just about fed up with how long this is taking. We do understand that when there are many involved, it can be difficult to juggle all parties to come to the table. We are now afraid that Milton will be another excuse to delay this even further. The parties involved are playing a who is most macho game and who has the biggest phallic instrument, while we are the ones suffering the consequences by the lack of due diligence by all these parties involved. Milton has forced our playground to be completely shut down. Some homeowners are worried about erosions in their backyards. A homeowner's retention wall has cracked and is bulging due to the excessive water that has never drained since Hurricane Ian. We need rain boots just to get our mail. Our sewers are sinking to the point where a small child can fit in that hole. I'm not big, I could probably fit in there as well. Our sidewalks are cracked and unsafe. It took so long just to get a pothole fixed by the city. Why? We are taxpayers like any other Deltonians. We are 196 new homes paying between $5,000 and $7,000 in taxes per home. Yet we get very little from the city. Instead, from all the meetings I have seen, it loves to squander our taxes frivolously. I can tell you
Ms.
that my
Rosewood, let's
sister...
stick to facts, please.
I can tell you that my sister lives in Sanford, in a gated HOA community. The city of Sanford visited her community immediately after Milton, and with water trucks and drained their retention basins free of charge in order to prevent major flooding in surrounding areas, streets, and neighborhoods. The floors that we are experiencing is not the HOA's fault. It is you guys who voted for all these developers. We did not build or approve or release bonds to these builders or developers. The fault is on the builder, developer, engineers, and all the city inspectors that passed this. We are innocent homeowners that trusted those that built our community did so properly. We at this time are demanding that something be done. We've lost our patience. We have been very patient while all these parties show no sense of urgency. We are being forced possibly to seek litigation and media exposure if this game continues with us. Osprey Estates, we were here before you to tell you that that was a concern with flooding. And what happened in this hurricane? Flooded all of Doyle Road, closed Olstein Elementary School. 2 years is enough of this suffering with nothing being done except playing ping pong with this. We feel like the stepchild of Deltona, yet you gladly collect our taxes. Thank you.
Anna Foser, please.
I'm going to do the best I can to not cry. I've actually been doing pretty good holding it up since this. 2002, before I purchased my home, I double-checked and made sure of where I was. I knew I was in a floodplain. I did everything. I did my research for me and my 3 children to move into this home. I was homeless for 5 years, so when I purchased this home, it was a big advance for me. It was a big accomplishment, and I was very proud of myself, and I wanted to keep this place safe. In 2002, Hurricane Ian and Nicole both flooded our homes. I got stressed out. I moved my stuff out to save that house and found out that FEMA wouldn't do any assistance. My flood insurance wouldn't do anything because it did not get onto the foundation of my home. My homeowner's insurance wouldn't do anything when it flooded my backyard and personal property that I had in a gated backyard. I dealt with it. I called the city to try to see what I could do to be able to protect my home from a future problem. I was told that there wasn't anything that I could do, that I had to trust you guys to be able to do your jobs. I did. Now, here it is again. My child does not want to live with me because she does not want to deal with this stress. I've got another child with me that he doesn't know how to handle this because he's 11 years old. And I'm trying to put it together to not break down. I've been trying to stay strong with this. Florida legislation has just passed that now if our home's flooded, we can't sell our homes without disclosing it that's been in a flood. Who's gonna buy a home that flooded? So now, as a single mom of 3 children trying to move into another home, I've got to deal with rising interest rates, rising flood rates, and then the possibility that someone's going to buy this home. So I'm stuck. And I'm trying to be patient, and I understand y'all are doing everything that you can, but I also find frustration that there is not just an overdevelopment, but it's the speed of this overdevelopment. Y'all are not giving the chance to be able to see the course of the actions and the consequences, good or bad, of this overdevelopment. I understand the reasons for it. I'm not against it. I'm just against there's no actual research to make sure that how fast you guys are doing it's not impacting these homes. Either buy these homes out that have flooded, raise the elevation, or give us the opportunity to build something to protect these homes from further flooding because the government has locked us into these homes. We want to be able to be here. We want to pay our taxes. My mother's ex-military, she's retired. I've joined the military. I'm doing everything that I can. And I just want you guys to be able to show us that there is action. Be transparent. You know, everything that y'all have done, that's great. But at the same time, when we're sitting here telling you that we've got these floods, you have retention ponds that are empty. I'm not telling you guys to take one retention pond and flood to another and flood to another. I'm asking a disbursement. You've got retention ponds that empty out naturally. Great. So some of the retention ponds that you know flood, move some of that water to these ponds that naturally drain, that naturally disperse and allow the water to evaporate. Do those. That's all I'm asking is what I can do, let me do what I can do within what you guys are allowing me to. I want to protect my home. I don't want to move, but you're forcing my hand to where my children don't want to live with me, and it's not my fault.
Kathy Bryan, please.
Hello, good evening, Kathy Bryan, Deltona. Number one, thank you to Commissioner Harriet, Shimkus, Avila Vasquez, and McCool for coming out to the Deltona Community Gardens, and thank you, Doc. Doc brought his better half with him, and I know that he was looking around at some different things that we could perhaps do, and may I suggest that you work with Marcy and the Peshas and a few of the other people that have been out there that kind of know exactly what those gardens need, and thank you for the name button, Troy. So also I wanted to remind everybody that this is Cybersecurity Month, and with the holidays coming up, and I know we had like that film back in August of Thelma that Sheriff Shitwood put on, but it's always a good time to remind people about cybersecurity and don't fall for stuff. And people always do, because they'll catch you on a day when you're upset or stuff's going on. So I think having that constant reminder, maybe a little, when you guys send out the city messages, a little note about cybersecurity. Just keep it on the forefront of everybody's mind. Number 3, I have a gopher tortoise that lives on my spare lot. He's been there for several years. I love him. I call him Turbo. But today I walked out and found that somebody had put some romaine lettuce out. He was over digging in his other hole at that time. But I ask anybody who's listening, anybody here in the audience, please don't feed wild animals. You may think romaine lettuce is a good idea. It may be cute to have them come eat out of your hands, but they may not be getting the nutrition that they need. I watch him eat all the time, and he's eating the weedies, like the Spanish needles, the ones with little pokey things everywhere. So those are the foods that they're used to. They've been here long before we were. So please don't feed wild animals. It's also an invitation for them to get used to humans, which isn't good for them. And it may not be good for us if a turtle chomps down on your finger. I don't think it feels good. So I'm just putting that out there. We don't have to feed them. They have food from the wild or they wouldn't be here. Hurricane debris. I'm driving through Deltona, and I see sometimes these little piles of debris. You don't necessarily, why does a garbage truck have to pick all that up? Take some of it out to your back 40, spread it around. I'm not talking about huge logs necessarily, but take some of that smaller, throw it around, mow it over. It's good for your yard. Not every leaf has to be raked up, honestly. So let's not put it in the landfill or wherever it goes. It's good for your yard. So make your yard happy. I do have some questions. I was glad Mr. Hamster was here doing the presentation. That was great. But when we pump water from one place and put it in another place, how many other people, so you've got this neighborhood here, we're flooding. Okay, we're going to come move the water. Now it goes down over there, and these people are going, we're flooding. So, and I'm really surprised that some of the houses that are so close to the water weren't built up. It seems to me they should have been in the first place. I know that's not on you guys. And for all of you guys asking about, why hasn't the city taken care of me, let me know. Well, it's the same with the city, your medical bill or otherwise. Sometimes you have to do your own research. You have to stand up for yourself. And I'm going to tell you now, start with the state. Because a lot of the stuff that developers are able to get away with is mandated by the state, because sometimes they tie county and city hands. Then go to your county. Sometimes you got to make noise in big places. So just saying, have a great night.
Doreen Beauregard, please.
Hi, Doreen Beauregard, Fort Smith Boulevard. First, I'd like to start by saying that speaking in front of a group is not what I normally like to do, but I felt it was necessary and very important to express my gratitude for everybody that came out to try to keep my house from flooding. Unfortunately, we lost an addition where my adult son and his wife sleep in, and also my bathroom going out to my pool door was flooded also. So since the 12th, we have not been able to live in our house, also due to the septic system. no water, no toilets. I do want to thank everybody, though, who stopped by to help. I really do appreciate that. I have lived in this home for 30 years. My husband and I, who is now deceased, that's why my children have lived with me now, bought this lot 2 years before 30 years, high and dry. No problems, no issues. Matter of fact, we had a green belt in the backyard. Now it's called a retention pond. For 30 years, really no problems until the 3 hurricanes came, which were Charlie, Francis, and Jean. We still did not get flooded, but what the city did was make a park across the street, and it is beautiful, and it's a really nice area to live in. But the flooding issue has to be corrected in that area. It's not only my house. I was fortunate it was only 2 rooms in my house. We did lose my pool system, the whole pool area. There was a lot of damage, really a lot of damage. My neighbor, who's on the right of me, his house was totally flooded, totally. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I have a lot of wonderful memories in that house that my husband and I had built, but I know partially 2 years ago, the water did not intrude into our house, which I was very thankful for. This time it did, and I know you all know about Hampton Oaks, and I firmly believe that is part of the problem in our area. The beautiful park across the street, which I love, the nature park, all kinds of wonderful wildlife, it cannot hold the water coming down from Hampton Oaks. That first time ever, our street had to be closed. It is really sad. I have no other choice to possibly leave the area and hoping maybe the city will acquire the houses in that area, and maybe the solution is to make that whole area bigger, a big retention pond. Do I really want to leave there? No, I don't. I have too many memories in that house with my husband, who's no longer here, and my children love the house too. So thank you for listening to me. I'm kind of going to lose it. But in another note, I want to thank Dana and whoever worked on the event Saturday night at the amphitheater. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Brandy White, please.
Brandy White, Deltona. I am not going to speak about some of the things that I was going to. Instead, I want to read you a couple letters from Chris Collier's students. Dear Mayor, please stop building houses. Your houses are causing floods. Mr. Collier is a great problem solver, but for some reason, you guys don't listen. Dear Mayor, please stop flooding our city. Dear Mayor, please stop building houses. Mr. Collier can help. It's not fair. I mean, they go on and on. There's probably 30 in here. In addition, I'm going to try to say this as respectfully as possible, but Mayor, please stop hammering people when they give their opinions. All she said is she said that the meetings, she feels we're not being frugal with our money. That's an opinion. It doesn't need hammered. I think you guys are getting a little overboard with the decorum because the decorum's on you, not us. Now, with that said, I'm going to turn my attention to the flood presentation we saw. They gave a great explanation and breakdown of how water is measured. But what I see when we have the developments come forward and we talk about what is necessary for their stormwater runoff and their drain system, that's not used at all. It's a formula that's very lacking, and that's what's caused our problems. The developments were never told that they had to go better than the bare minimum that we have provided that they need to do, which I'm curious how long it's been since we've even updated that formula. In addition, the statement that we can solve Catalina, but sorry about the residents, you're going to flood, that's asinine. You're telling me with all this consultant money, we can't come up with a problem that solves both? A solution that can solve both problems? That's just never heard of. Why would you even think of elevating something if you know the result is flooding others? It shouldn't even be a question. It should be like, okay, so we're going to need to raise it, but how do we mitigate the damage to the residents? But I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that anywhere. It's, well, we don't want to piss off people further up because we'll get sued. Well, guess what? I'm going to introduce you to a term called culpability. Get real good and familiar with that term, because everybody that I've went and sandbagged, I taught them about culpability. I asked them, oh God, education. I asked them, was the city aware previously? Did emails or messages go out previous to the storm for assistance? And in at least 2 cases, there is public record. One, Chris Collier from September, warning you, come empty some of this before we flood. Nothing done. Thankfully, Mr. Mayor, you did open the weir early, because we would have been in a whole heap more trouble. Since I'm almost out of minutes, I just want to ask a few questions. Hindsight now, it's been over a week. As a commissioner, is there anything that any one of you would do differently for the next hurricane? As a commissioner. And in addition, is there anything that you would do different or ask to be improved on behalf of the city? Thank you.
Tim Blodgett, please.
Tim Blodgett, Deltona. Hi, guys. Well, I got very unpopular on Facebook because I gave you guys a compliment. The compliment I gave was for pre-positioning for the hurricane and taking some preventative action, which in comparison to Hurricane Ion, since I do watch you folks, was outstanding. Mr. Doherty, very nicely done for your first time here. Anyway, for those commissioners of you who were sopping wet, covered in mud, and had dirty boots, thank you very much for helping out the community. Brandy White, you should get Citizen of the Year for the efforts that you put through. A lot of things have been brought up. The answer to the flooding problem is very simple. The people in DeBarry already did it. It's called a burrow pit. Nobody wants our water. St. John's Water Management doesn't want it. They don't want it in the river. They don't want us injecting it back into the aquifer unless we clean it and treat it. At some point in time, they're going to turn around and tell us to stop flushing our toilets into the sand. So, what can we do? We have to come up with inland management solutions. The reservoirs around here, I've been here 25 years now, and I did a bit of landscaping for the folks in the neighborhoods around here. There's a number of reservoirs that I've seen. Some of them were 10, 12, 15 feet deep. They're now flat. Why is that? They're flat because we live on a sandbar. And eventually the sand shifts and we end up with flat. Well, those reservoirs were supposed to hold this water. Now that volume is filled in with sand. Back in the early 1960s, when they made Deltona, they took all of the floodplains, put a bunch of bulldozers on them, and pushed all that sand out of the middle of them, creating a reservoir. And the raised land around it, they put houses on it. And over the years, those houses have sunk. So, what do we got to do? Personally, I think after we get the Teresa study, probably due out within the next few months, we're going to have to take a look and see, maybe we have to wait until the reservoirs dry out, get back in there and start pushing sand with bulldozers. We may have to take some of these floodplains and dredge them out, build up the edges, and then we'll have that volume back again. Anyway, that's my answer to the problem. As far as the St. Johns River is concerned, the river is completely flooded. For those of you who don't know, the St. Johns only drops 8 inches from its headwaters up by Milburn all the way to Jacksonville. So, if you decide to go sightseeing on the St. Johns, please don't go over idle speed, or you may be pushing water in somebody's living room along the river. Aside from that, that's about it. Well done, although I know a lot of folks don't think you would. Well done. And especially to Brandy White. Have a good night.
Courtney Cross Burgos, please. David Sosa, please.
All right, actually, I had something else to talk about today. I was going to finish up my conversation the other day from when I was interrupted. But I'm going to go ahead and let's talk about the flooding, because that was a good presentation. Doyle Road, Osprey Estates. That thing was built up how many feet above the street? And now it's causing what? Flooding. You can't even drive down Doyle Road right now. Not only are the folks in Cortland Park affected, but the folks on the other side of the road that have lived there for 25, 30 years, that used to be a big ditch. It used to be about 50, 60 feet down. That thing's flooding, and it's up to their barns now. Okay? So for some people say development doesn't cause the flooding, it absolutely does. All right. Now, when we look at the Teresa Basin, have we looked at what Lake Helen is sending us? Because the Teresa Basin, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Hamster, if you can correct me on this, does it not flow into the Teresa Basin, waters from Lake Helen? Okay, so we have water coming from Lake Helen. How many of you guys know about 2 or 3 years ago, Lake Helen did a massive improvement to their stormwater and increased the flow of water to Deltona? Is that something we have looked into? That is something we need to address. They're sending us more water. You go over to the land across the street, you got Victoria Gardens. Where do you think all that water's coming from? They built on thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. It goes into Lake Helen, and Lake Helen ships it right down to us. And we have done nothing. They've spent tons of money in Lake Helen, increasing the flow of water. Okay. Also, where Mr. Collier lives, you have 3 Islands South. That thing used to sit probably 15 feet below the road. It now sits above the road. It was a 16-acre, at least 16-acre parcel that is now sitting above the road. So if you estimate 10 feet, 16, that's 160 acres worth of water. I mean, that would take care of a lot of the flooding around those houses on 3 Island. Okay. Now, a couple people brought it up. Why don't we filter the water? We have the Alexander Rib site. That was set up to flow up to I believe it was up to $9 million gallons of water off the straw project on the St. John's. Why are we not taking some of the storm water, pumping it into the Rib site, and sending it back into the aquifer? I don't know if it's logistics getting the water there, what the cost is, but is that even a consideration? Also, pumping water to the Deep Creek Canal. Once again, we're displacing water to the Deep Creek. That Deep Creek runs into Lake Ashby. Lake Ashby runs into the Deep Creek Canal. The Deep Creek Canal runs behind 23 acres I have in Osteen. Guess what the canal is right now? Overflowing. My bridge on the St. John's probably goes from here to the back of that door for my dock. Guess what? It's 3 feet underwater. So dumping water into the Deep Creek, you might be relieving the problem here, but you're creating a mess for somebody else. What we don't need is a mess for somebody else. What we need is solutions for everybody. Be a good neighbor. Okay? Now, I heard, borrow pits. What did this commission approve probably about 2 years ago? A borrow pit. Where? On 415, right across from Collins Road. Mr. Pell owns that property. He used that.
So I apologize. Guys in the back, I've been very
Don't
lean.
cut me off because I'm going to run out of time.
You'll get your time back. Don't worry. I'm trying to make sure we're able to hear you. I keep getting interruptions. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, we have Mr. Pell owns that property. He was given the okay to use that as a borrow pit. He wants to put a 9-acre lake there. I'm not sure what the geography of that property is. I know it's called a savanna. It's over 100 acres. I know some of it's wetland, some of it's not. He wants to put a 9-acre lake there. How about if we get some of that water over to him, have discussions with him? Is that something we can talk to him about? That would take care of two things. You got the rib site, and you got, Mr. Pell's property if he wants that water. Now, if a resident comes up here, and it kind of irritates me, if I want to say you're spending my money foolishly, that's exactly my opinion. And, honestly, if I go to the budget and I do public records requests, I can prove you're spending my money foolishly. So to tell somebody, stick to facts, I have a problem with that. That is their opinion. They're entitled to their opinion. And honestly, their opinions are very valid. All right. I'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you.
Tim Schultes, please.
Hi, I'm kind of new here. This is the first time I'd actually been in this building. I thought I was walking into the UN. It's a very, very, very stunning building. It's very nice. Nice to see you folks sitting aloft. I've lived here for 3 years. I moved from New Jersey, because I wanted to get out of the sickening politics that were up there. And I moved into a lake full of problems. This is the second time I've been completely flooded out of my home. I'm living in a hotel on FEMA's borrowed time. And it's because of a house that was sold to me. And all I could say is thank God for my real estate agent who told me to get an insurance policy because that place had flooded before in the past. Talk about disclosure. Now, I'm a moisture remediation specialist. I've built indoor pools, condensation-resistant indoor pools. I know the different states of moisture and how it works and how it moves, how thrusting comes up from the ground, percolation goes down into the ground, and you guys are killing percolation. Killing it. The house that was just built behind me from D.R. Horton brought in 35 loads of sand, built the house on the sand, and you know where the sand's winding up? On my property. Water trespass. You ever hear of it? It's a popular term in Florida. Let me tell you something. I'm a Bible boy. And you know what the Bible says? The wise man builds his house on the rock, and the rains descend and the floods come and the wind blows against the house. And you know what happens to it? Nothing, because it's built on the rock. But the foolish man builds his house on the sand, and the rains descend and the floods come.
Sir, can you please direct the chair?
Sure, I'm sorry. Am I limited to the lectern?
No.
Oh, okay. And you know what happened? It falls. And you know what the last line of the scripture says? And great was the fall of it. That's what foolish building does. It creates problems. You guys in this town have allowed developers to overbuild. You got no percolation anymore. You're losing your ability to absorb the moisture. Yeah, we know about 18-inch floods that come once every 100 years and all that. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop until this earth is renewed. That's another Bible thing we should be talking about. You ought to put a moratorium on building. Amen. Period. How many building is going on right now in Deltona? How many building permits are out there building single-family homes? I want to know the number. You don't know. Shame on you. Meanwhile, people are getting destroyed. Wake up, smell the coffee from a moisture remediation specialist. I know more about water than your buddy Walker knows. That guy you got in charge of water, he don't even have...
Sir, no personal attacks, please.
Who's Walker?
Whoever he
Who's
is, no
Walker in charge of water
personal
in
attacks, sir.
Deltona? Who is? That's a question. It's no attack. Who's Walker? Is he the water guru here? No, he's not. Silence is golden. You ought to stop building. Wake up and smell the coffee. Ignorance is bliss.
Albert Ryan, please.
Or Brian Deltona. That was entertaining. Actually enjoyed that. I'm going to change the subject just a little bit here, then we'll roll back to that one. As y'all know, this past weekend was Biketoberfest. And I got to say it one more time. I say it every year, every bike week, every event that we have in Daytona. I appreciate what the sheriffs do. They enforce an improbable law of staying what I consider somewhat within certain boundaries. And in Daytona Beach, sometimes that's difficult for the sheriffs to do. Where I work at the flea market, week in and week out, we see little issues. Not anything big, just little issues. And they respond really quickly and take care of it. Really calm-like. They don't raise Cain and or otherwise. They very calmly come out and take care of the problems. Here in Deltona, I hope they do the same thing. I've never had to call them. I've never had to even deal with them other than a one ticket when I first moved in here 31 years ago. All that being said, when I drove from my house over to the flea market the Friday right after the storm, Hallam Boulevard was nice and clear. There was a light or two that were out. That's okay, I understand that. I get over to Daytona Beach and I get off at 92. Right there, you turn off on the 92, you see LPJ Boulevard. Right at LPJ Boulevard is the essence of what everybody here has talked about. Because I've been out there 9 years now, 10 years. There's only 2 times I've seen water literally over 92 out there. Both of them are right after these hurricanes. Oh, why? Because they built all these houses and now the water goes from the north to the south. It literally shut down the westbound side of 92. That's 2 hurricanes in a row. It shut down 92 because they've overly built without doing anything to change where the water moves to. Larry Finch always comes up here and tells y'all that you continuously build, but you don't look at where the water has to go. The water flows normally according to how the grain is or how the level is. Ours starts up higher on the north side and then levels out for a little bit and then goes a little lower on the south side. It takes time for the north lakes to drain to the middle, and then even more time from the middle to the south to get to where we all call a weir. What I have a problem with is I've actually been here 31 years. We've been a city, how long? 27 years? And yet, for so many years, we did nothing. Matter of fact, I can remember when John Madrick was sitting in your chair, Mayor, and he says, oh, we have solved the flooding problems. We don't need to take and do anything with raising the stormwater fees. He almost wanted to do away with it. And yet, just a couple years after that, I had a manager sitting in his seat that told us we needed to bump it up to $190. And not this commission, because there was only a couple of y'all here back then, said no. And then last year, y'all folded, just literally folded, and said no. How can you get anything done when you continuously say no to helping?
Thank you. Christian O'Brien, please.
Hey guys, good evening everyone. Just a couple quick things. One, I want to say thank you so much for the amphitheater concerts this past weekend. It was just dope. That was a rockin' band. Great turnout, really enjoyable event. So I really hope we can do more of those. So first off, thank you for that. All the organization, everything that went into it was just stunning. Second thing, most people won't care about this. A couple weeks ago, during the millage rate vote, I did get up here during public forum and state that my taxes went up a whole lot. That actually was egregious, as I think some of you know. It was brought to my attention that my math was just way off. My ending number was right, but my starting number was wrong. So it turns out I was paying more in taxes than I thought I was. But that being said, I wanted to take accountability. And then with that, I wanted to actually just see, and I apologize because I was late, but with all this stormwater and flooding and things that are going on, 6 months ago in March, we had a capital improvement project meeting with which we focused on a couple things. One of them was a Deltona water project that was about $60 million that was estimated. That is going to be, if I'm correct, part of next year's budget. And then, according to that chart, I believe the 27-28 year, that's when we're actually going to be seeing the revenue coming in for that. So that's about like a $60 million project. So my concern as a, as a resident is kind of everything we saw the last couple of weeks with, going back and forth about this and that, and, some of the small items that we talk about. This $60 million that's coming up is going to be a pretty hefty, task for the city. And I apologize if there was an update, but I haven't really heard much of anything just regarding that update. So that's kind of my request. I think with everybody coming up here talking about like flooding and stormwater and things like that, I think it's a big issue that hopefully we can start to tackle now. So I'm not sure if there was any update. I know we were talking about getting some grants for it and things like that. So if there is an update, if someone could point me in the right direction, or if we as a city could either get an update or revisit it or have a meeting about it, I think it's a pretty hefty size of money that we should start thinking about right now. So I guess that's it. That was my three things. So thank you very much.
That ends public comment.
All right, this time we're going to move to ordinances and public hearings.
That's good news for you.
Go ahead.
For the young lady whose house flooded with the two young children, I'm not sure if she's still here. I do have some good news from FEMA and also my discussion with the city manager. Because of the recent storms the last couple of years, FEMA has raised the threshold for acquisition of homes far higher than it used to be, to the point it's very attractive as a grant. FEMA expedites those grants because they're getting a home out of a floodplain that won't flood again. And I talked to the city manager, and if we do acquisitions where we can repurpose the property for ponds, the city is amenable to spending the 25% match for the homeowner, and the grant pays the 75% for the acquisition. So the homeowner has no out-of-pocket costs if they choose the acquisition route. So, and there's plenty of unpack from tonight, but I know you got business. We'll do it another night. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry, but in speaking with that, we had talked about that because of that is in my district, right? So just before the resident leaves, I have her information, but we will be talking. There are 3 residents in the audience regarding that we had talked about acquisition. So in reference to that, I just want to follow up that conversation Wednesday night and can make an appointment with the city manager also. Thank you for that, sir.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward with ordinances and public hearing. A, public hearing ordinance number 07-2024, amending section 22-186 to 22-191 of street vendors of chapter 22 business of the Land Development Code at the second and final reading.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. There's a motion by Commissioner Harriet and a second by Vice Mayor Jody Lee. Is there any public comment on this?
Of course there is.
Brandy White, please.
Yeah, because that's got to be brought up. All right, so I appreciate you guys looking over this again and all the great work he did. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Jordan. He was very informational and explained to me the need and the reasons behind some of this wording. However, I hate to say it, there's still a little bit of a problem. When you use the word mobile retail vendor, which is very similar to street vendor, you're still clumping in rental services, which is not what you mean to do, as we spoke about in the hallway. I have two options to fix that. You can
Ms. White,
either...
I'm sorry, can you pause your time? There's multiple conversations happening. I understand that some of it is by staff. Could we please take that outside? We're trying to conduct business. Same with the public. I apologize, but if you want to have a conversation and I can hear it, please step outside and have that conversation. Go ahead, Ms. White, you can start your time again.
There's two ways to fix this really quickly. One would be under mobile retail vendor, the new section that was just added. You could put in there excludes rental services, because then that still solves his problem as well as my problem, because you got to remember this is a legal binding document. So verbiage is very important here. Or under street vendor, just add /mobile street vendor, because really the definition between street vendor and retail vendor is identical, just one says mobile. So if you want to include both and just write mobile /street vendor, that covers both of them, or just exclude services or rental services under mobile retail vendor. Thank you.
Harriet's not here to amend his motion, if he wants to.
Waiting for Commissioner Harriet.
Thought it was just me.
It wasn't your fault this time. Commissioner Harriet, you want to continue with your motion?
There's a word messed up.
Was that?
There's a wording part that's messed up.
Who made the amendment?
No one. We're asking if you want to move forward with your motion.
Yeah, is anybody?
Mr. Mayor, we have.
Hold on, guys. Go ahead, Marcia.
Thank you. We have a suggestion that was made with regard to an amendment. I think Jordan can address that, and, because I think he's okay with a particular part of the language that may work. And so I assume you all would like to hear that.
Go ahead, Jordan.
So as Ms. White said, under mobile retail vendor, just add the word exclude rental services, and that will be suffice.
That's good, yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Motion agrees.
Okay, so we still have a motion by Commissioner Harriet and a second by Vice Mayor Jody Lee, who agrees with the change as well. So can we please move forward with the vote?
Can I read the ordinance?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ordinance number 07-2024, an ordinance of the City of Deltona, Florida, amending sections 22-186 to 22-191 of Article 6 Street Vendors of Chapter 22 Businesses of the Land Development Code of the City of Deltona, providing for conflicts, codification, severability, and an effective date.
Commissioner O'Connor. Could you just move forward with a verbal vote then, if that's not going to work? Did it come up for you, Commissioner? No. Let's just go with a verbal vote, please.
Commissioner Avila-Vasquez? Yes. Commissioner Colwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harriet?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yeah.
Commissioner Shimkus?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jody Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. We're going to go ahead and move to public hearing ordinance number 15, 2024, amending Chapter 30-31, elections, and adding Section 30 through 38, filing officer at second and final reading.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 15-2024, amending chapter 3031, election items 3033.
There's a motion by Vice Mayor Jody Lee and a second by Commissioner Avila-Vasquez. Is there any public comment?
Brandy White, please.
I answered it earlier. Thank you, though.
Can you read the ordinance, Marcia?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance number 15-2024. Okay. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deltona, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 30-31, elections, amending Article 1 in General Section 30-1, early voting, amending Article 2, a candidate, Section 30-31 qualifying period, and Section 30-34 filing of other items, and adding Section 30-38 filing officer, providing for conflicts, providing for incorporation of recitals, codification, severability, and for an effective date.
The ordinance passes 7-0. This time, we're going to go ahead and move to public hearing resolution number 2024-41, granting a conditional use to permit a daycare center within the General Commercial District C2 for property located at 3026 Helen Boulevard.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion to approve by Commissioner Harriet and a second by Vice Mayor Jody Lee. Is there any public comment?
Brandy White, please.
Daycare.
Kathy Bryan, please.
She's in the hallway. She's in the hallway. She's talking to the guy who's here about it.
Yeah, we're going to have to make sure if we're going to have to keep going. We can't stop business because someone's not in here, so. Let's go ahead.
Kathy Bryan, Deltona, daycare. I just have a question. I'm not objecting to them putting it there, but is there any city ordinance or is there otherwise on, and I think there's Florida statute on it, because they're talking about 152 children with 12 staff members. That's a little over 12 and a half children per staff member. And from what I was reading, from birth to 1 year, it's one person for 4 children. From 1 to 2, it's one person per 6 children. And kindergarten, right around that area, it's 1 to 8. I've seen a couple different numbers, but they range close in that. Is that something that we have to look at as a city before we approve this to go in there? I'm not taking my child there if I were people, one person for 12 kids, especially at that age. I'm just saying. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up because I'm like, and maybe I just don't understand all the concept behind it or how much, if there's other people helping or otherwise. So, okay, thank you.
Kathy, I think that gets regulated by another professional body.
That's regulated by them.
Well, that's where I was reading that from, so that's why I was like, I don't want to see us get in trouble.
I'm going to answer that.
We're good, Jordan. Thank you.
Cool.
Do you have another public comment?
Yes, I am actually. Sorry, what was that?
Hi, Chris Casey's on engineering. I'm actually a project engineer going forward on this project. I just want to address that. The ratio of students to teachers vary by age group. It is a ratio count of 0 to 5 years old that we're using primarily for this development. It is also regulated by DCF. We are within the guidelines of what those ratios are, but 152 is a maximum based off of the age breakdown that we have for that. So 152 isn't the average, it isn't the minimum, it is the maximum number based off the anticipated age ranges that we are expecting in attendance.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The motion passed 6-1.
Oh, thank you.
This time, we're going to go ahead into public hearing. Resolution number 2024-58, granting a variance to allow a 4,462 square foot existing office building to encroach within the side and rear setbacks of an 0.36 acre property located at 1670 Providence Boulevard.
Make a motion.
There's a motion by Vice Mayor Jody Lee.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCool. Is there any public comment? All right, can we please vote?
I'm surprised you didn't make the motion.
Because I was talking.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, is there any comments on the consent items?
Brandy White, please.
Brandy White, Deltona. I don't think I'm going to get through all of them, so let me just start with the purchasing agreement, Section 2, the 3K tire dumping. Not that it's something that we can deal with now, but I would like for in the future, perhaps we can contact Weber Recycling or Wheels for Wishes. They actually use tires in their products, and they would be more than happy to take them off our hands and save us 3K. Just something to look at. The other one was, I'm just curious, under legal, what are we basing that on, since we really don't know yet what our contract is? I just want to make sure there either, is enough or it's roughly around the right amount. Also, under the refuse and abatement, does that say 6.5 million? Is that the correct number? I just want to make sure it's not a typo. And is that's our contract for trash, correct? Because I also noticed that under various vendors.
Ms. White, which one are you looking at? My apologies.
On the purchase orders. So I'm assuming that's our trash contract, although I don't remember it being quite that high. The reason I ask is because there's another section that is also listing abatements.
Yeah, that's not we're on the consent items.
Yeah, isn't that on the consent agenda?
No.
Okay, so on the consent agenda, because that looked like it was on the consent.
A through H, and then there's 8B.
Oh, y'all changed this all around.
There's 3 sections.
So what is technically on the consent agenda?
A through H.
Anything up to H? Oh, Lord. Okay, so that's fine, that's fine. That was fine, that was fine. That was fine. So then my only question, and again, I get it, it's probably a need, but for a part-time position, do we really need to buy a brand-new truck? It's a part-time position. Is there nothing we can do? We don't have some other vehicle for this part-time position? I just think, $62K for a brand-new truck for a part-time position, I just want to make sure we're looking at all of our options before spending that money. Thank you. And thank you for letting me know the change.
May I like to make a motion?
There's a motion by Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
I move to approve consent agenda 8A as in apple, letter A to letter H.
It's a motion by Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCool. Motion passes 6-1. This time, we're going to go to action items, 8B. 8BA. All right. Are we going to do public comments before?
These are like your new business.
Okay, I got it. Got it. Okay, so we're going to go to request approval, resolution number 2024-64, expenses related to Hurricane Milton. Commissioner Harriet, and did you still want to go afterwards?
Are we doing public comment first?
No.
This is like a standard item.
Okay. First off, I wanted to thank Doc and staff for putting this list together for us. This was my request at the last commission meeting. I also wanted to remind everybody that these expenses on this list are approved. FEMA has declared Volusia County for Hurricane Milton, and these would fall under categories A and B where the work. And Volusia County has been approved for 90 days at 100%. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to approve these items for item A.
So a motion by Commissioner Harriet and a second by Vice Mayor Jody Lee. Is there any public comment on A? No? Okay, let's vote.
And this is approval for A?
Just A.
Just number 8. 8BA.
It passes unanimously. We're going to go to B, resolution number 2024-60, declaring zoning in progress regarding amendments to the Land Development Code to clarify provisions in the Live Local Act, which amend Florida Statute 166.04151.
Make a motion.
So motion by Vice Mayor Jody Lee. Second by Commissioner Colwell. Is there any public comment?
You don't want that one.
Okay.
You don't want this.
No.
Commissioner
Jody and Colwell.
Commissioner McCool, you're on the board.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping that someone under our comments are going to speak about this. We have some abatements. We have some SHIP apartments that we need to speak about, and I just want to bring that up as we are moving through this, because we're having projects going to be ramrodded down our throat as a city here under this guise right here. So I'm putting the alert out that I want to do as much as we can to protect our city under the guise of erecting affordable housing. And thank you, staff, for addressing this and moving forward on this to protect our city from this predatory stuff. I really, really appreciate it. This is really important, and I hope that our community, when we're talking about overdevelopment, understand what is happening here with this act and what the commission is trying to do to protect our city. So most everybody that was talking about development and how it's being shoved down our throats have left now without hearing this important part so that they can speak to their state and county reps regarding this. Because we have a lot of lobbying going on for more development in our city, and we need to talk about protectionism for our city as opposed to this. So thank you for taking the first of, I hope, many steps to protect our city from this type of predatory development under the guise of affordable development. It's much appreciated by the residents and those of us that have been fighting this for a couple of years now. So thank you.
All right, can we please vote? Motion passes 7-0. We're going to go to request for approval of purchases for fiscal year 24-25, contingent on approval of final budget.
So move.
So motion by Commissioner Vasquez.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCool. Is there any public comment? All right.
That's purchase order. This is for the
Now I'm back for the right one. All right, so we already talked about the tire fee, obviously, but I was looking at the $6.5 million under refuse. But I also noticed it talks about that covers abatements, but I see abatements in here as well. do we have different types of abatements?
Mr. Mayor, if those can be passed on to the city manager for clarification.
Sure.
Finances.
Finances, right.
Do we pause that while she answers, or do you want me to just give you my whole list?
Keep going.
Okay.
This is why I asked the commission to please not interrupt or try and answer questions until the speaker's done.
All right, so then the next one, obviously, employment attorney. Can you kind of give us a little backdrop on that? As well as Section 4, 150-day consulting for community input. Is that not something we have staff that can hold a little meeting with the community instead of spending $150,000? And then we have a temp consultant for $100K. What does a temp consultant do? And then Section 5, $40K for a temporary employee. And then Section 6, these lawn services. Also, we're paying $325K for cleaning drain ditches, but didn't we just spend a whole lot of money on some fancy machine that does that? So why are we still paying $325K to a company to do what we just, what's it, a Menzie, I believe is the word? We just, for the second one, I think we bought a second one because the first one got messed up. So we're just spending a lot of money on these big machines, but then we're still paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to people to do that work. So if there's a difference or a reason why it's not all included, if you could just kind of give us a backdrop on some of these, along with some of the various vendors that were listed. One of those was a second abatement. So I don't know if we already have a contract with Waste Pro for abatements, why are we paying another company for abatements too? If you could just answer some of those, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Never mind, I'll answer my question. Really?
Ms. White, when you have time, could you just leave your questions there with the city manager, and then they'll go ahead and respond to you? Go ahead. The motion passes 5-2. City Commission discussion and selection of city attorney applicants to move forward to the interview process.
Can I make a motion to have all 7?
It's a motion by Vice Mayor Jody Lee to have all 7. Individuals, firms, okay. There's a second by Commissioner Shimkus. Well, Caldwell beat you to it. I'm sorry, I'm halfway deaf from this year.
Huh?
So there was a motion by Vice Mayor Jody Lee and a second by Commissioner Caldwell. Is there any public comment?
Courtney Cross Burgos, please.
Hello. I actually wanted to ask what Jody Lee asked. I would like to see you guys interview all 7 between the private lawyers and the single lawyers and the firms, because this way we have the best chance of getting the best people. We saw what happened when we went for the city manager. Nothing against you, Doc, but they fell out as we were limiting, and then we ended up with 2. And, this way we can hopefully get the best. We spent a lot of money to have him go and find them. The least we could do is have you guys vet them and make sure we get somebody good. Thank you.
That ends public comment.
Commissioner Harriet?
Thank you, Mayor. My opinion on this is that we've talked at length about firms versus individuals. We've had a firm for the last how many decades, and we've constantly had problems with billing and validating billing and just general administrative issues with that. I think that the city, it's time that we take the next step and we hire a single individual that will serve as our city attorney, and that they could build a department around that will work for them and will be responsible to them. It's a single point of responsibility versus a firm. They can, kick it down the road. They can blame it on something else. So.
Thank you. The motion passes 6-1. All right, this time we're going to go ahead and move to city attorney comments.
I have none.
City manager comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quick, as many people know, some of us in staff are getting together early on of some of the mitigation we can do for the future storms. Some things were mentioned tonight too about some deepening some lakes, deepening some retention ponds, and definitely looking forward into purchasing homes of those homeowners willing to move forward, and not just that, but some of these infill lots before we allow more houses to be built in some areas that we can also use as some retention ponds, that the city may look at possibly purchasing some of those, but that's going to be over the next several months. We'll be bringing some options. Dave was correct. FEMA is willing to pay up to 75%. The city would just match 25%, and the number of homes, possibly 10, 15, 20 homes that are really in the flood areas are, I believe, something that we can definitely do, and there may be other grants and funding to actually cover the other 25% for us. So several things staff's looking forward to get moving on. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to city commission comments and reports. We'll start with Commissioner Harriet.
I just wanted to thank staff again for their diligent response to the hurricane, and that's all I've got.
Thank you for keeping it short. Commissioner Shimkus.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say this is actually my last and final regular city commission meeting, I do believe. There's a couple special meetings coming up. Thank you for the last 8 months. I have enjoyed my time in this group. It's been challenging. It's been rewarding. It's been very eye-opening on many levels. To the staff that I've worked with, thank you so much. You've all been very welcoming, very encouraging, and I've enjoyed working with many of you, all of you, I should say. Not going to leave anyone out. And I look forward to continuing to be involved in different ways in this city. To those in the public who have chosen to reach out to myself when you've disagreed with my thoughts and my votes, I appreciate you reaching out to have a conversation. I've always enjoyed having that conversation about how I got to where I got. I have no problem explaining my thought process to anyone who's ever asked, so thank you for those that have chosen to do that. I look forward to more of those conversations with people as well. So with that, I will also say that my replacement happens to have been here all night. Thank you, Emma, for being here. I think I will kind of put you on the spot and say, if you see her out there, I think she's willing to talk to you and hit the ground running. So I will look forward to seeing her up here and seeing where the commission goes. I think we've made some great strides in the city in the last 8 months. I know some people have had some hardships, and I do apologize for those, and hope we can find a way as a city to remediate as much of that as possible moving forward. For those of you that have been devastated through flooding, I know how tragic that is. My family has experienced that in several places as well. I would just encourage you to look at what this commission has done in the last 8 months that I've been here and involved, how many developments we have challenged, pushed back on, and canceled for those very reasons. You are seeing the change. Unfortunately, as we all know, government moves at a glacial pace, but those changes are happening, and I hope to see those changes continue to happen as we find a better way of building our city more responsibly. So I'll leave it at that. Again, I've enjoyed my time here. Thank you all, Commission, for welcoming me and helping me. Thank you, staff, again. You guys are really amazing. The work you do is thankless, but I thank you for all the work you do. Good night, everyone, and I will see you in the audience.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to give a great big thank you to staff for all they did during this hurricane that for Milton, who decided to come this way. The EOC, you guys work, I think it was 3 days, 24/7 in this room right here. I dropped by 2 days, and and there was everyone on the phone working, taking calls in. So thank you so much, Phyllis and Glenn, thank you. You responded to my emails in the middle of the night, regardless of what time it was. Thank you so much. Again, regular staff from Public Works, the Water Department, those of you who never seen it, if hopefully, pray to God, we never have to go through this again. But if you ever come and watch how this room turns into an emergency response group, you'll be surprised of every staff member. And people said to me, yeah, but they get paid. But you know what? They get paid, but they volunteer to be here because they have families as well at home. And they leave their families with other families so they can be here helping the city with the emergency calls. So kudos to those staff as well. And I also want to say to Parks and Recs and Doc, thank you so much for bringing Motown back. And a lot of people were so happy. I mean, the turnout was great. The weather was perfect. So I'm sure we'll see back. I still want to see my food truck festival, Mark. And Commissioner Troy, thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for being part of us. And we'll be getting good together. Thank you, everyone. Get home safe.
Commissioner McCool.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would also like to thank staff for the amazing job that you guys do and continue to do. We see you, and we've made some great changes, as we talked about, from where we were and used to be regarding that flooding, and you're not thanked enough, in my opinion. I'd like to apologize in advance to the Iron Maiden, because I'm going to be a moment, so I'm just going to say that. I want to speak to this, that I encourage you to be to the domestic violence meeting, as we need to support this cause for our community. It's very important that we continue to talk about social issues as things happen in our community, flooding, things that put stressors on. I think that you heard Chris Collier allude to that these very stressful times, and so you're not alone. I wanted to say that. Please join me at my town hall also. It is open to all residents on Wednesday night at the center from 6 to 8 p.m. We will have resources available there. Again, St. John's will be there. We will talk about some of this flooding some more, and I will make sure that there are more of the presentations from Mr. Hamstra that will be available to the community that night, along with other resource guides. It is very important to show up, come out, please be heard. We do care, and I believe that each commissioner and the mayor are holding these so that if you can't make one, you can make another. They're very collaborative, and they're very important to our community. I'd like to thank the Hispanic Chamber for stepping up way high. They have been doing some amazing things around town. Collecting food Saturday night was another thing that they have done, and they've been very involved here as we move through this challenging time. And I've had the pleasure of being to 2 ribbon cuttings now in the last 10 days or so. There we have Deltona Auto, so thank you for investing in our community. I'm so proud to have that business here. And then we was at the ribbon cutting for VEMA, the Veteran Motorcycle Club, and they take care of law enforcement officers, veterans, police officers. So it's a worthwhile group, and they are amazing. And on the heels of that, I'd like to thank Doc, our city manager, for showing up to these events, showing that you're committed to the community, participating, getting to know people, and let people getting to know you. It will be any time we assimilate into a community, it is oftentimes hard getting to know everyone and letting everyone get to know you, but thank you for being out there, putting yourself out there to give everyone the opportunity. It's appreciated. So thank you. Also, my last thing here is, as a commissioner, I've never been fearful about litigation from a developer. I've been challenging developers in this city for 6.5 years, since well before I was a city commissioner. And some of these properties that we have talked about, I fought vehemently against them, even though otherwise it's being stated otherwise. So I just want to put that out for the record, and have challenged developers coming into this community to pay their fair share, proportionate share, and I think that I'm on the record of stating that. So there are commissioners and a commissioning body that does care about development and what it is doing to our community and how it is presented to our community. And it's really hard as a commissioner also when you have people lobbying for development as opposed to lobbying for a community. So I would encourage you to reach out to state and county also, because residents should come first. We have had a horrible situation where a perfect storm has occurred. On the back of a lot of development, on the back of a new administration trying to take care of old administration problems that are years before, engineering problems that were passed before through commissions that weren't seated right now, that allowed development to propagate because they were fearful that Deltona was going to be the forgotten child. And so things were pushed through, shoved down, and this is where we're at. So now we have a community and a governing body trying to straighten this out, trying to crawl out from the pile of bad engineering decisions and desperation. And, you know, I am not willingly complicit with this. And when we're talking about development, there are junior attorneys out there that believe that they know what development is without the advantage of experience or feet on the ground, understanding what litigation is, understanding what regulatory things that we must go through. And we are under the threat of lawsuits from every developer that comes in here if we don't approve a development that we would think that's not good for our community. So understand that, have that awareness also. So lawsuits are always a threat, no matter what side of the coin you're on, but I can assure you that I've been working hard for 6 years to try to stave this off. So look deep before you throw crap out, and know that your commission is working hard in order to protect you and your investment and your property rights, while at the same time trying to address the serious infrastructure issues we had, which were oftentimes bowed down to because no one wanted to look like the bad guy and spend the taxpayers' money. Well, here we are, people. So I stand resolute here. I am very proud of the job that I have done, that this commission is doing, trying to right the wrongs as we get out from under some of these old limitations that we have. And I think that we just need to continue to move forward. And you watch where money is going right now in your political cycle, also development money. Do your campaign reporting and look at where the money is coming from. I get to say this, you know, as a protection to my public. If you want to know who's voting for who, go do your due diligence and look at campaign reports. So thank you for letting me share.
Commissioner Colwell.
Yes, it's come to my attention that the folks in charge of Enrico Ridge have formed a new corporation and are pushing a new project forward. I believe as of September, we've accrued some fines of $136,000, and beyond that, it's $850 a day. I'd like to get consensus to move forward with a letter of intent to foreclose.
Can you do a verbal?
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
We have a special magistrate lien on that property, and at this point it is approximately $137,000. If all of you agree with Commissioner Caldwell and go forward, then I would then, or the attorney who comes after me, I would, before I go, do that we give them 30 days notice in order to, you know, deal with us, or we proceed to foreclose this lien, the city. So I just wanted everybody to know what this is about.
All of us or a majority?
Excuse me?
Just a majority.
A majority is fine. It doesn't have to be unanimous. I just meant that I wanted you all to know exactly what all of this was.
Process was.
Thank you. Go ahead and call for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, could you ask Mr. Colwell to reiterate what he is asking after the attorney has presented what she has presented? Mr. Colwell, could you restate?
Yeah, to send out a letter of intent, which is a 30-day notice. Yes.
Yes.
And what's that? And
Do you still want to go to no response to start with?
With no response, yes, start the foreclosure process, yes.
Commissioner Villasquez?
Yes.
Commissioner Colwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harriet?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Shimkus?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jody Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. That's it. Vice Mayor Jody Lee.
My turn. I want to thank everybody, city staff, Glenn, Phyllis, all your departments, all your people, all the people in the city. Fire chief, thanks for taking over the city and running it through the hurricane. Doc, you did a good job your first run around. I appreciate all you guys doing everything you did. For the storm, for the hurricane, for everything we had, it worked out pretty well for us considering what's happened in the past. Now we need to fix some things, and I hope now, instead of just worrying about parties, picnics, and parades, we start working on our roads. That's what we wanted to fix some of this stuff that's been long overdue to get done. We keep putting stuff on a back burner. You know, I'm not worried about, I know I've heard stuff about stopping the magistrate and getting rid of it and doing it a different way with the magistrate and redoing the employee handbook, and I just want to get our major infrastructure issues taken care of so we can work on that and not just all the other hoopla stuff. You know, there was so much stuff I want to talk. I mean, I was just I hope we can fix this whole thing with Osprey Estates. I'm sorry that one resident left that was saying I haven't been over there. And thank you. I called you the Thursday morning of the storm, or after the storm, during the storm, whatever it was, where the water was coming out of the sewer drains in Osprey Estates, flooding into neighborhoods, which made no sense to me. You got a pump out there. I appreciate it. They put a pump in. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but they put the pump in out of the lake, and they ran the flex pipe into the sewer drain on this side, which there's a T, and it was coming back out of this sewer drain, going back down into the pond. So we were doing a good circulation thing with a pond. So I just don't understand how a lot of that in Osprey Estates was built. Like I said, there's a wall, retaining wall. If you look at the plans, they say we're supposed to put a wall in to block the property next door that people have been there for 43 years in that property. But they put the wall in, and then they elevated the land. So now their barrier wall is like this tall, which is really kind of comical. I don't know where the barrier comes in or the privacy from the people that have been there 43 years. So I guess that's what we do. We like to, in the past, ruin people's property and livelihoods where they grew up and their families raised. I just hope we can stop that in the future. Other than that, I think everything else was good for the hurricane. Everybody did good. Our team all came together. Everybody worked pretty good together. And that's about all, I guess. So thanks, Barry.
All right, just a reminder, I have a town hall coming this Thursday. If you're able to make it, if you haven't been able to, if you couldn't make Dana's, you can make mine. It's at 6 p.m. at the center. Just two more things. Advent, I'm partnering up with Advent to do a big diabetes awareness thing. It's coming up in November. And I'm also working with the Department of Health to bring the mammo truck here to City Hall. And the last thing I want to talk about is I want to see if I can get consensus to, at a minimum, put this on an agenda, which is to revisit the St. John's lawsuit situation. I want to see if I can get consensus from everybody on the dais. Not to make,
I thought that was already being.
I want to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's, that we're going to, it's going to be on there, so can we do a verbal consent to have it on the agenda?
May I have a question?
Yeah.
Is it St. John's or the engineers that work on the projects?
The lawsuit.
Okay, I'm good.
Good.
Commissioner Vila Vasquez?
I'm good.
Commissioner Colwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harriet?
Yeah.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Shimkus?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jody Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. Meeting's adjourned.